Okay, we're live.
We're live. Okay, good evening. This is the planning board in session. Present is the current members. This is Dan McGillicott, Kevin Thurman, George Boyle is en route, Mike Smith, Laurie Davidowitz is sitting in for George, and Mike Buffalco is in the wings. We have two sets of minutes to deal with. Has everybody looked at the minutes and any questions on the minutes for April and May? Okay, let's do April. Do we have a motion to approve April's minutes?
So moved.
Second? I'll just do all in favor. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? No. Now the May minutes. We have a motion to approve the May minutes.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. For April and May are approved. Sarah, any issues with taxes?
No.
Okay. The batting order for tonight will be number 1, 2021-17, 19 North Ferris Street. Number 2, 2021-13, 75 Hamilton Road. Number 3, 2021-01, 19 Matheson Park. Number 4, 2019-20, 2 Barney Park. Number 5, 2021-25, 47 Station Road. Number 6, 2021-20, 50 Half Moon Lane. Number 7, 2021-15, 2 Ardsley Avenue East. Number 8, 2021-26, 2 Clifton Place. Number 9, 2020-21, 202 Hermits Road. Number 10, 2021-24, 49 Kingsley Close. Number 11, 2021-23, 25 South Cottonwood Street. And number 12, 2021-22, 61 Riverview Road. Okay, going on with number 1. Do we have, Sarah, do we have anybody here for 19 North Ferris Street?
Yes.
Good evening. Everyone hear me?
Yes, we hear you. At least I can.
Okay, good. Good evening. My name is Bill Witt. As you may recall, I was here a month ago when we were looking initially at the project for 19 North Ferris. At the time, I received several comments from Mr. Hahn's office in reference to the engineering requirements for the project. I believe a lot of them have been addressed, if not all of them. There were a few comments we received from Ms. Nolan in reference to the landscape, and I believe after speaking with her that I've addressed them on the plan as well. I gather there were 3 main concerns that the board had in our brief conversation. One was you wanted me to prepare a compilation of scale information for how our house relates to neighboring properties. That had been submitted, so that's referenced as PB1 in my submission. And I believe— Would
you mind just going through that for the record?
Certainly. Let me share my screen. Okay, I hope you're able to see this.
No,
We usually are if you share.
no, it's not sharing, Bill.
All right, let me try it again.
No, it is.
Looks like it's happening. There we
Okay.
go.
Second time's a charm. So on this sheet, as I mentioned, PB1, I'm listing all the neighboring properties in the block.
Can you blow it up a little bit? So
Certainly. Are you more concerned with the numbers?
I would just want to see how it, if you go through it,
Sure.
say what the
So here
how this coverage
sure.
compares to the others, because I believe
Absolutely.
you need a variance for coverage, so we want to make sure it's not out of whack with the neighbors.
Absolutely. Just to give you a point of reference, I'm showing all the houses along North Ferris, several on either side, and on North Eckerd, because these are homes that back up to us. I didn't omit any properties. This is, every house that's in that area. You can see 19 North Ferris, the first listed. I have that as existing and proposed. We do not have an FAR issue on this property. We have a coverage issue. So I'm going to focus almost entirely on the lot coverage. The existing percent of lot coverage is 19.6. We are proposing an addition that's going to push that up to 29.6, which seems high in relation to what would normally be allowed in this zone. But as you go down and you look at the neighboring properties as they exist, and as per the documents that are available to me, mostly through the Town of Greenberg's website, you'll see that 10 North Ferris currently has a 43.9% lot coverage. Keep in mind, I'm not including driveways. A lot of these properties are multifamilies where almost some of them have the entire lot that's paved, whether or not it's considered a driveway or a patio, it's all paved. 15 North Ferris has a lot coverage of 39.1. 21 North Ferris has a lot coverage of 42.4. So as we go down, you'll see there is one or two, I believe 10 North Eckers is the only one that is slightly under what I'm proposing. And 24 North Eckerd, again, is 1 percentage point approximately under what I am. Some of these are reaching up as high as 94%, essentially 75%. So I think the nature of the neighborhood, the multifamily aspect of it, there's much more severely dense in this part of town. And I think that what I'm proposing, while I do understand it does require a variance, it's not excessive in our opinion, and it's going to meet the minimum needs of my client. And I believe that this chart kind of proves out that not only in lot coverage are we well within the neighbor norms, but in FAR, we're well under the, just for the massing of the houses as well from the neighboring properties. I've also included photos of the adjacent houses and a tax map just to give you some indication showing the structures on their properties.
Okay, that was very informative, and it looks looking good. Thank you.
Okay.
You go on with you.
So the next thing that was of concern of the board was the view preservation. As you know, this building is in the view preservation district. So what I attached for you here is an analysis that I've done. You'll see in the upper left-hand corner of the sheet is the aerial map showing that my property, or the subject property, is about 1,500 feet from the Hudson River. And then I do a tax map. And what I've done here is I've taken strategic photographs, and I'm actually looking for views. So I took photographs not only across the street, but I walked onto the property, which is an elevation of about 20 feet higher than the ground elevation of my addition, to take pictures. I apologize that it's hard to read at this scale, but you'll notice this number 5 picture was taken at elevation 132. That's 20 feet higher than the land over here. And then when we go to that picture, you can see that there's just no views that are actually available to these properties. And this is 20 feet higher than where I am at that point. Along the street line, I did little peekaboos between the houses. It's just that the density in this neighborhood would preclude any views if any were available. You can see from the property map that some of these lots are just from right property line to left property line. So it's fairly dense. I wasn't able to see any views. I was barely able to make out the hint of the Palisades on photo 5. But again, I think what's important here is that since my proposed addition is in the rear of the existing structure, my roof line will not be any higher than the existing house, and it is set back in from the sides slightly, just to mitigate any potential for view loss.
You answered my next question, is that the height is not changing.
It is not.
Okay. Thank you. That was very informative. I really appreciate the pictures for view preservation. It goes a long way to help us, visualize what's going on.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Go ahead. Next.
So those were the two main concerns. I believe that another main concern that the board had was, because this is a contributing building to the historic district, you wanted me to go in front of the Architecture Review Board for preliminary review. We did that a couple of weeks ago. We had a productive meeting. There were several comments that were made and some recommendations, none of which, in my opinion, are material to our application. They do involve, for instance, removing shutters from the upper portion of the house and from the sides. Members of the board, I showed them some old photographs of the house. They seem to think that the house could do without the shutters to maintain its simplicity. So we certainly agree to do that. Other
Just
suggestions.
just for the sincerity, I happened to listen in on it, so go ahead, but the rest of the board did not. So go ahead.
Okay. The other
And
area.
I agree with the shutters.
Okay, good. The other option was they were looking for me to provide some type of gable end treatment. I'm going to show you just the exterior elevations of the house. You can see it's a very simple, classic, symmetrical Dutch farmhouse. Our rear addition, a few members of the board thought it a bit stark, although there's plenty of precedent in the neighborhood. So he asked me if I could look into some options for some type of gable treatment to soften that up. There was some conversation about
You're
dropping.
talking about the back end of the new roof.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct. In this area here that I'm circling. And then the other recommendation or suggestion was they actually asked if it would benefit the property if the addition, instead of being centered in the rear of the house, you can see that I've set it back 1 foot from either side. Instead of it being centered, if it would be pushed all the way to the right-hand side to give it more of a 2-foot indent on the side that would be more visible as you're walking from Main Street. So we're exploring that. We're not talking about making the addition any bigger. We're not going to be raising the lot coverage or the FAR. It just comes down to how we would potentially shift this over. And if you'd like, I'll show you an option. This would be this is just an alternate that I put together after my architecture review board meeting, where this addition was slid over 1 foot to the right to give more of an offset on this side. So as you would be approaching it from Main Street, this mass of the addition would be set back an additional foot. I do have some reservations about making this change. I feel like this type of architecture is really about simplicity and about symmetry. But I wanted to do this to show not only your board, but when I go back to the architecture review board, I want to show them the options and let them know that we're certainly taking their suggestions seriously, and then further that conversation. But I would add that we're not increasing the mass of the structure either in floor area ratio or in coverage if we decided to shift this over that 1 foot. I would need to get a variance, obviously, to build any addition on this house. If I slide it over that foot, it would be lining up with the existing house, where I'm currently proposing that it's a 1 foot step back in. If you'd like, I could show you that on the site plan as well. So this is just an alternate where the addition is set back that extra foot, aligning with the right-hand side of the property.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And I think the idea was it's a much more open side yard. And the idea was as you're walking down from Main Street, it would be set back even further and would be the mass would be less realized. I believe that was the comments. So those are the main 3 comments that they had. And some suggestions. We talked about the materials on the house. They agreed with what we were proposing. We did discuss a little bit about how maybe the addition would go further back instead of being wide. I looked at that. There's really no way that I'm able to get my interior requirements in by doing an addition of that type. But I think that this might be a compromise worth pursuing.
I think they commented on the new foundation, the fascia of the new foundation.
Well, he asked what I was going to
doesn't
do with it. I
affect-
mentioned it
doesn't
was
affect-
it was going to be a concrete parging where the existing house has got a rubble stone foundation.
I think our landscape architect had minimal comment. The site is tight and plantings were something that were not necessary. I don't believe they were necessary.
Yeah, and I spoke with Susan, and some of the issues we had was because we have such large critical root zones, that would be an issue with any type of buffer planting, and they wouldn't actually provide the buffer because on one side of the existing property is a driveway that belongs to or serves the house to the right. So there's really no opportunity for planting over here. I did put some evergreens just to hide the air conditioning condensers that I'm proposing on this side. So that's just a small token to so my neighbors don't have to look at these that the condensers located on the side of the property.
Very thoughtful. Okay, let me go through the board and see if we have any questions with this. Dan?
No question, Caesar. Certainly a lot of work went into it, and it really looks pretty.
Okay. Kevin,
No questions. Thanks.
Lori,
No questions.
Mike Smith,
No questions. I appreciate Mr. Witt's presentation.
yes, I thought he did a very credible job, especially on the view preservation.
Preservation.
At first brush, we could assume there was no impact, but it's good to see with the pictures that there wasn't any, to verify what we may have thought. Okay, Mary Ann, do we have a resolution prepared?
Yeah, but you know what? I want to ask Ed something. I mean, this was the first time I heard. Could you stop sharing? Could you unshare the screen, Bill, so I could see Ed?
Yeah.
Ed, if he's shifting the building, that is actually a change in because before when we talked about this, the kind of changes that they were talking about, like changing the roof or taking shutters off, whatever, wouldn't affect the site plan at all. Shifting it a foot might. So I don't know whether you want to include in the resolution something that you would approve it, that you're still okay with it, even if it shifts a foot the way he presented it, so that he doesn't have to come back.
Well, it doesn't change the coverage because
No, I know, but it doesn't change the coverage, but it does change the sighting of it.
Yeah, but this is, the denial letter is written on the application to the planning board. There's variance is issued on the plan that was issued to the planning board. And so the ZBA, he's not going to go to the ARB until after the ZBA. If they move it a foot, it changes the numbers on the variance. Not that it's substantial, but the record is the chain is broken of what the approval.
Yeah.
If I may, what I was going to propose when I do submit this to the zoning board is to give them both site plans. I don't know.
We're not fans of options.
I understand.
Yeah, but this is a pretty unusual situation.
I know, but look, if he has to go back, he has to go back. The ARB should understand that.
What, Ed, I'm confused. What would he be coming back to us for if it's moved? The coverage doesn't change. If he gets a variance.
But it's more than coverage you're looking at, Caesar. You're looking at the site is a location of it on the property. It's moving.
To me,
It may not change your mind, which is why I'm suggesting perhaps you would want to make it would be unusual. And like Ed said, we don't usually do options, but to avoid them having to come back to the planning board, coming back to the planning board, if they do have to shift it the foot, is to include in the resolution something recognizing that if the ARB, requires this 1 foot shift, or if, that the site plan approval would cover that too, unless that says that we shouldn't do that.
Ed, what do you think?
It went to the ARB for comments. If they wanted it moved, they should have told them to move it. And if he wanted to move it because they told him to move it, he should have moved it. I understand the timing and all that stuff, and I'm not trying to be difficult about this. But I'm struggling with variables and options that are just going to get mixed up, lost, and potentially become a contentious matter later on.
In my listening to the ARB that night, it was a suggestion. It didn't seem like, gee, it's going to be so much better if you move it. So I think if you present it without the 1 foot movement, I didn't get the, now you can correct me. I didn't get the sense that they were pretty hard and fast on, you got to move it.
No, I agree with you, but I did want to at least prepare something and let them know that I studied the matter, and I didn't want. Obviously, I didn't have the time to present.
You can do that. Hey, look, we got approval from the planning board, and to leave it the 1 foot on each side, and if you really if you're really gonna make me move it, I have to go back to both those boards. And we'll leave it at that.
Okay.
All right, so I do have a resolution with it not move the foot. Whereas in May 2021, James Heavey applied for site development plan approval to build an addition, deck, and stormwater system at his house at 19 North Ferris Street, which is located in the View Preservation District and is a contributing building in the Historic District. And whereas the proposed modifications exceed permitted lot coverage and intrude into the side yard setback, therefore requiring variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals. And whereas Hunt Engineering reviewed the plans and in a memorandum dated May 3rd, listed a number of items, all of which were addressed in a subsequent submission. And whereas at its May 5th meeting, the planning board advised the applicant to have the architectural review, I'm sorry, excuse me. Have the ARB review the proposal preliminarily, because the proposed construction is a significant change to a contributing building in the Historic District. And whereas the ARB did make some suggestions to the applicant, but they should not require modification of the site plan. And whereas the village's landscape consultant's comments were addressed to her satisfaction, the proposed improvements would not impact the view of the Hudson River from neighboring properties. The actions of type 2 action under secret and therefore requires no environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board grants the application for site development plan approval of the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled proposed site plan prepared by William Witt, subject to obtaining variances for coverage and side yard setback from the zoning board.
Okay, before I take a vote on this, I didn't ask for any public comment. Sarah, anything out there?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay. Any further comment from the board? No. I will take a roll call for the vote. Dan,
I approve and designate Sarah to sign for me.
Kevin,
Approve and authorize Sarah.
Lori,
I approve and authorize Sarah to sign on my behalf.
Mike Smith.
I approve and authorize Sarah to sign on my behalf.
I approve Caesar Manfredi and authorize Sarah to sign for me. Nice job. I appreciate you, the patience of going to the ARB. Our intent was to get a yes or no on the whole idea. And it worked okay. They didn't have anything objection to it, and some modifications that you're going to work on maybe. So thank you very much. That went very well. I'm sure this is going to be, when you're done, a terrific asset to the village.
I believe it is. Thank you very much for your time. Have a good evening.
All right, number 2, 2021-13, 75 Hamilton Road. Sarah, anybody presenting?
Mr. Chairman, Sam Vieira here. I'm here, and Obata from Hudson Engineering was supposed to handle the presentation because most of the information missing from the last presentation was the stormwater management and site development work. Sarah, is he not available?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, Obata.
Hi, Obed from Hudson. How's everyone doing tonight?
Okay, before we start, I want to make note of 2 emails from the public, Jessica Schmidt from 67 Hamilton and Melissa Hersack, 85 Hamilton, both commenting on the lack of need for plantings to keep an open backyard from backyard to backyard. Okay, go ahead with your presentation.
If you want, let me just pull up the plan. Give me 1 second. Everyone see it?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sure Sam has obviously already explained what the proposed plan is, and you haven't seen the stormwater yet. But in summary, with the addition being proposed in the back alongside the patio, the test results we had in the back weren't great for the sake of infiltration system or anything of the sort. So we've done a comparable area capturing the front half of the existing roof, sending it into the attenuation gallery in the front yard, which would then overflow into the stream in the backyard, or just before the stream in the backyard. And quite honestly, aside from that, we're not really doing much disturbance aside from what was discussed last meeting.
All right.
And also, Mr. Chairman, the previous submittal required a small coverage variance due to the requested size of the patio in the rear. And in an effort to streamline the process, we have reduced the coverage on the lot and the proposed addition and patio to the point where it's in keeping with the maximum allowed by zoning. So therefore, we will not be seeking any variances at all with this proposal.
Okay. Ed and Doug, are we satisfied with the floodplain issue and the stream protection and permitting for the water course?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and there's a few minor comments left, but yes, overall.
Okay, the only question, can you get a side view from the east or from the west of an elevation view of the east, from the east?
I don't have the architecturals, Sam. I don't have them on me.
Oh, I'm sorry about it. I didn't download anything. I thought you were going to have.
No
the
worries,
entire
just give me.
presentation.
Well, it's just a
Sorry,
minor
Mr.
issue.
Chairman.
The neighbors and indicated they didn't want to see foliage blocking the openness of the backyards. And I can appreciate that, but then there was an issue we had talked about, some shrubs up against the lattice so they don't get the full view of the side of the lattice. I don't think it'll interrupt what they were talking about, the openness of the backyards, any more than the extension itself. If you want to put them, fine. It's up to you. Do you have any plans to put any foliage around immediately in front of the lattice so it doesn't interfere with the openness of the backyards?
Initially, Mr. Chairman, there were no plans. I mean, it's a lawned backyard. There were some mature trees around the perimeter, and for the most part, there's not.
I wasn't talking about the perimeter. I was talking about immediately in front of the lattice.
Immediately in front. Well, again, if the board believes that some landscaping along the sides there will soften the impact visually, at least at the bottom part of where the lattice is, which is meant to sort of mitigate the look of a tiered addition.
Well, that was my point in the first, but the neighbors seem to agree that, that they don't want, or they don't desire, I shouldn't say they didn't want. Let me poll the board. Dan, what do you think?
I'm all set with the as presented, Caesar.
Okay, Kevin?
I don't feel strongly about it being any landscape addition being required.
Mike?
Well, I didn't get the impression that that the neighbors' comments would have precluded the plantings around the base of the lattice, but I don't feel that strongly either.
Okay. All right, it was a suggestion. If they're not there, fine. I'm ready to, any public out there, Sarah?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
All right, Marianne, yes, Marianne, you have a resolution prepared?
Whereas in March 2021, Yun Katerina Choi applied for site development plan approval to build a one-story addition on concrete piers on their house and a patio underneath on their property at 75 Hamilton Road, which lies in the Barney Brook floodplain. And whereas Han Engineering reviewed the plans and in memoranda dated March 2nd and June 1st, listed a number of issues, most of which were satisfactorily addressed. And whereas the village's landscape consultant reviewed the plans and made recommendations which were addressed to her satisfaction as in a subsequent submission, the planning board held a public hearing on March 3rd and June 2nd. And whereas the proposed construction will alter a floodplain, so was reviewed for compliance with the flood damage prevention chapter of the village code as detailed in Han's June 2nd, 2021 memorandum. And whereas the proposed construction requires a freshwater wetlands permit and as detailed in Han's June 1st, 2021 memorandum, it meets the requirements for their permit. And whereas the proposed construction requires a water bodies and water courses permit and as detailed in Han's June 1st memorandum, it meets the requirements for their permit. And whereas the actions of type 2, action under SECRA, and therefore requires no environmental review, now therefore be it resolved that the planning board issues floodplain, freshwater wetlands, and water bodies and water courses permits and grants site development plan approval for the construction reflected in the drawings entitled Proposed Addition and Alterations to Troy Residence. And they're detailed, prepared by Samuel P. Vieira, and proposed additions and alterations 75 Hamilton Road. Sheet C1 and C2 prepared by Hudson Engineering and Consulting, subject to complying with the items listed in the June 1st, 2021 Han memorandum.
Hey, any questions? Okay, I'll poll the board for a vote. Dan,
I'm in favor of the resolution and authorize Sarah to sign for me.
Kevin,
I approve and authorize Sarah.
Lori,
I approve and authorize Sarah.
Mike Smith,
I approve and authorize Sarah.
Caesar Manfredi approves and authorize Sarah to sign for me. Thank you very much, and good luck with that. I don't know how you're going to afford the building materials costs have skyrocketed, and good luck with that.
Thank you very much. Good
Thank
night,
you.
all.
Number 3 is 2021-01, 19 Matheson Park.
Matthew, make sure Brad's unmuted and
Hello, we see you.
Okay, here we go. Hi, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Rad Opachich, the architect for 19 Matheson. Good evening, everybody. We made some minor adjustments, mostly on the stormwater management that Han and Hudson worked on since our May 5th meeting. Other than that, the plans are pretty much the same as you saw it at that meeting. If there are any questions, happy to.
Now, the last submittal that we had to review had no worksheet was shown. You have the worksheet tonight for FAR?
We had a worksheet last time as well.
no. Caesar's referring to the FAR worksheet, which we hadn't submitted because it was from the original. Matthew, if you could bring that up. Yeah, we did submit the FAR worksheet. There was no change to that from the submittals because most of what was updated was related to landscape and stormwater.
Well, we don't know that until we look at it.
Alrighty then. We're
Doug,
cooking with gas.
Doug, I assume you looked at this? Doug Hahn?
Yes, we reviewed it, Caesar. Everything looks okay.
Okay. Yeah, and if it's not, you came in the first meeting, it may have been there, but it was missing in the second submittal. And if it's not
Understood.
there. if
Understood.
it's
We'll
not
make
there,
sure.
It doesn't exist, so I'm glad it's there
Out
now.
of sight, out of mind.
Okay, and the other question was the pool equipment. You had 2 locations last time. Did you settle on one that doesn't require a variance?
Yeah.
We did. We went with option 2, and which is within the pool setbacks, which is now we understand is not requiring a variance.
Okay, and I believe we looked at a neighborhood comparison for coverage last time.
Yes.
We did. We can look at it again if you like.
Okay, go ahead. Just run it up if you got it right in front of you.
Nat, you want to take us quickly through this?
Okay, so we had done an analysis of the properties within the same zoning district and pulling information from the town of Greenberg website, compiled property areas, and then compared allowables to existing based on the information that's contained on the website. And our proposed total lot coverage goes incrementally up, but it's still in line with the bulk of the neighbors, despite the overage in what's allowable for the property.
Let's see, where's, 19 is up at the top. Okay.
Yep. And we're listing, we show first what's existing and then underneath what's proposed. So you have the comparison values for what we're starting with versus what we're asking for.
Okay, this looks good. And Ed, the house, the controls on the house for the pool safety, locks and windows and doors, that's been taken care of.
The balance of that review will be done at building permit decision.
Okay. Right, anybody have any comment on the board? Dan?
No comment, Caesar.
Kevin?
No, thank you.
Lori?
No comment.
And Mike Smith?
No, I'm glad that the project got as far as it is tonight. So with all the additional information.
And Sarah, any public out there?
There's nobody raising their hand to speak. The only comment in the chat is from the homeowner who's thanks you for your time.
Okay. One last note that while I was waiting for that, all your lighting is dark sky, I assume?
That's correct.
Okay, Mary Ann, you have a resolution, please?
Whereas in January 2021, Andres and Jacqueline Cyrulnik applied for site development plan approval to construct additions and a new pool on their property at 19 Matheson Park, which is located in the View Preservation District. And whereas the proposed improvements require variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals for coverage and incursion into the rear yard setback. I believe that's because the gate is over 6.5 feet. No, it's not the pool equipment. So whereas the project is originally proposed included a driveway that would require easements to connect to a private road, but was revised so as to eliminate the need for the easement. And whereas the project was also modified to reduce coverage by reducing the drop-off area and removing the paving from around the pool. And whereas Han Engineering reviewed the plans and in memoranda dated January 4th, February 1st, May 3rd, and May 28th, listed a number of items, most of which were addressed in subsequent submissions. And where Suzanne Nolan, the village's landscape consultant, reviewed the plans and revised plans and made a number of recommendations, which were all addressed in subsequent submissions. And whereas the planning board held a public hearing on the application on January 6th, February 3rd, May 5th, and June 2nd, 2021. And whereas the proposed improvements would not impact the view of the Hudson River from neighboring properties, where it's a type 2 action under SEQR and therefore requires no environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board grants the application for site development plan approval of the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled A, Proposed Additions and Alterations 19 South Matheson Park, prepared by Hudson Engineering and Consulting. Secondly, the Cyrulnik residence, prepared by Opachich Architects and AZ Associates Ltd. And third, Cyrulnik residence, prepared by Opachich Architects. Such site development plan approval is subject to 1, obtaining variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals for coverage and rear yard setback and complying with the items in the Han memorandum dated May 28th, 2021.
Okay, any comment before I ask for a vote? Okay, We'll do the voting. Dan,
I'm in favor of the resolution and authorize Sarah to sign for me.
Kevin,
I approve and authorize Sarah.
Mike Smith,
I approve and authorize Sarah to sign for me.
Lori,
I approve and authorize Sarah to sign.
and this is Caesar Manfredi. I approve and authorize to sign. Okay, we're
Thank you
done.
very much. Have a
Thank you
good
very
evening.
much for your time.
Thank you.
Very good.
Bye.
All right, moving on to number 4. That's 2019-20, 2 Barney Park.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, hi. Hi, John.
So this is a project for a revision to an approved site plan. Basically, it's a shifting or a reduction of scope. It's a reduction of scope from our sense, but from terms of planning, it's sort of a shifting of scope. The addition that was being proposed is being eliminated, and there's a small exit door, and an existing porch that was proposed to be removed is remaining. So we received the comments. And I think, they're all quite small. I think there was a pitch issue on the porch, which we can correct. I don't know if you guys want to want me to share a screen, and if you want to look at stuff in more detail, we can do that.
Yeah, why don't we do that, John?
Okay.
Just briefly.
So quickly, I think the original project included an addition in this area here, and the elimination of this porch here. So in the new project, the porch is proposed to stay, and this addition is being eliminated, and there's a small addition that allows you to get out of the kitchen without changing the kitchen design that we had. There's no real change to the proposed stormwater system because there is a patio here, and the patio is the new impervious either way. So the stormwater system as designed here, we were going to keep in place. If you see on the civil here, the civil design has not really changed significantly. Doug pointed out that the patio is pitched, a 1/4 inch this way when it should be pitched to this drain. So we can correct that. But that's really the limit of the change.
The patio that was to go away is coming back, correct?
The patio was always in the job, so I think it's been adjusted slightly in size.
No, the one back of the house.
Oh yeah, that's gone, right?
Does the coverage change, and does it change significant enough to require a variance, or?
Yeah, well, I think the issue is that the job needed variances always. So it's a change to the variance that we approved. So I assume we sort of assume that it needs to be looked at again. So I don't think there's a significant change in the coverage or the FAR, but I think it has to be.
Well, the FAR goes up.
Right, the FAR goes up. Right.
Do you know what it goes up?
Let me check. So it's still 16 below existing, the proposed FAR, but I think it's up about 30 square feet from where it was.
Okay.
So it's it's sort of a de minimis difference, but I know it's a relocation, so they have to look at it in that sense.
So you got to go back to the ZBA then, right?
Yeah, we do.
But let's get back to the coverage. The patio that was going away, now the coverage variance is is higher than the original variance. Is that what you said?
Yeah, the coverage variance, I think, is about 30 square feet higher than the original coverage variance, but it's still a reduction of what the existing coverage is.
Okay. All right, Dan, you got any thoughts on this?
No, Caesar.
Kevin?
No.
Lori?
No, I'm good.
That was good, Lori. I changed the sequence there. And Mike?
No comments.
That's Mike Smith, that is. Sarah, anything from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak, and there were no comments in the chat.
Okay, Mary Ann, do you have a resolution prepared?
Yeah. Whereas on October 2nd, 2019, Laura Gray and Robert Honstein received site development plan approval to remove an existing porch, build a one-story addition, and extend an existing porch on their house at 2 Barney Park, which is located in the View Preservation District. And whereas in May 2021, applicants applied for a revision to the approved plan, eliminating the family room addition and replacing it with an entry addition and retaining the existing porch. And whereas the revisions require variances for coverage in FAR, and whereas Han Engineering reviewed the plans, and then a memorandum dated June 1st listed 1 engineering comment, and whereas the village's landscape consultant had 1 recommendation, and whereas the planning board held a public hearing on the application on June 2nd, and whereas the proposed improvements would not impact the view of the Hudson River from neighboring properties, and whereas the type 2 action under SECRA. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board grants the application for site development plan approval of the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled Gray Honstein Residence, and then they're listed, prepared by Ferguson Malone Architecture, and the sediment and erosion control plan prepared by Provident Design Engineering, subject to 1, receiving variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals for coverage in FAR, 2, complying with item 4 in Han's June 1st, 2021 memorandum, and 3, following the recommendation of Suzanne Nolan in her June 1st, 2021 review memorandum.
Any questions? And then I'll ask for a vote. No questions. Dan, you want to vote?
I vote yes in favor and authorize Sarah to sign for me.
Kevin?
I approve the resolution and authorize Sarah.
Laurie?
I approve and authorize Sarah.
Mike Smith?
I approve and authorize Sarah to sign for me.
Caesar Manfredi approves and authorizes Sarah to sign for me. Okay, you're all set, John.
Right, thank you.
I guess you're the next one. We changed the order. Are you aware of that with 47 Station Road? Is that you?
Yes, that's me. So I'll stay on.
Okay, we're done with number 4. We're moving on to number 5, which is 2021-25, 47 Station Road.
So this is
Why don't you tell us who you are?
Ferguson Malone Architecture representing the Mallets. This is a project for an addition on the existing house, a rear addition that is a kitchen and basement level addition, a ground floor and basement level addition. The proposed addition meets basically this is the rear of the structure back here. The addition is shown here. There's a roof deck on a portion of it and an addition here. The proposed addition meets coverage and FAR limitations, current coverage and FAR limitations. The limit of the addition is shown here. So this is a 2-story addition on the back, but it's actually covering, oh, I'm sorry, what am I doing? Something has happened here. Oh, I'm sorry, there's something wrong with this drawing, but there's a the 2-story drawing. Yeah, there's an errant, something that's gone wrong with a piece of this. But there's a 2-story addition shown here, and then a 1-story addition in the area that's indicated as roof deck. I'm not sure what's going on with this drawing. The addition is within the side yard and rear yard setbacks, and what we were proposing, which is something that I just wanted to touch base with, this is our first addition, so we haven't supplied any civil engineering at this point. was the property is on Barney Brook. And we had just completed a project, the one lot to the south. We're waiting for our wetlands delineation from Beth Evans, and we just haven't received it yet, but we're assuming that like the property just to the west, that the edge of the water is going to be the limit of the watercourse wetlands.
Yeah,
So you can see-
you also need delineation for the floodplain and the buffer zones.
So a floodplain delineation, so we'll add that to Beth's scope. I think she's just very busy.
And the buffers for both, the buffer for the wetland.
John, that'll come right from the FEMA maps.
Okay.
So John, the wetlands buffer at a minimum is 25 feet from the high water mark at 100-year flood. Okay.
Okay.
All water courses are wetlands in our zoning code.
Okay. So we'll rely on Beth to indicate when that is, I guess.
But at a minimum, it has to be 25 feet from the high water mark at 100-year flood.
Right.
25 feet from the high water mark.
Okay. So, I mean, I think you have to figure out, it's a water course. It may have an impact of a foot or more or something, but because it's a free running water course, you know, I'll ask her if there's any.
It's identified on the FEMA map, so just take the 100-year flood and add 25 feet to it. That's minimum.
Okay. Okay. So we'll revise that, but our goal is obviously to keep all grading and you know, everything that we're showing outside of that 25-foot line. The house is in the 100-foot line. The entire property is in the 100-foot line. So we'll put together a wetlands permit for that. So you indicated, and there's a separate permit that's related to the FEMA floodplain requirement. So we can do that as well. The thing that I just want to touch base with Doug, in the project just to the west, we had worked with Petretti's office on that, and I think it was considered inappropriate to try to infiltrate in that situation, and that it was more about delaying the water that would ultimately end up in Barney Brook rather than try to get it into the ground. Doug, is there some direction that we should give to Hudson in terms of what would be the most appropriate approach? Is that right for us to tell them that we need to do something on the surface to delay it rather than try to look for putting it down into because the hillside is so steep? I think the concern was.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to put it in the floodplain.
Okay.
So we got to see where that is. They've done a couple that had similar conditions, if I recall.
Okay.
So I think they're familiar with it, but yeah, obviously keep it out of the floodplain.
Keep it out of the floodplain, but it wouldn't necessarily mean that infiltration is not something that we would necessarily be doing here. We would be trying to delay it, or is it definitely?
Well, let's see where it is and then go from there.
Okay. All right.
I know I looked at it initially where it was. I don't recall where it was now though.
Okay. Okay, and then I think otherwise, just quickly to go through the project.
Well, before you go through, go ahead go through the project.
Yeah, just sort of so you can show what's happening. This is the existing house here. You can see it's very simple as a rear deck. So the proposed addition is in the area where the rear deck is now, or the addition is in the rear of the house, and the proposed roof deck is in the area where the deck is now. So on the first floor, there is basically an addition here on the ground, you know, basically on what's the main floor of the house, there's an addition that just extends the kitchen. And then on the lower level, that area extends the gym. And then below this proposed roof deck is basically a bedroom suite, a nanny's bedroom suite. So as you come out, there's access out from the basement level that goes into the rear yard. There's access from this roof deck down to the patio. The house is very simple, so the proposed elevations, there would be no effect on the front of the house. On the rear of the house, you see there's
you're increasing the height, is that correct?
You're increasing the height in the sense that the ground level is shifting slightly. The area where the addition is added is basically at the same level as the existing grade now. So there's not really a significant increase, but it's still below the allowed height level. So you're not raising the roof in any sense. It's just that the measuring point drops because the addition extends into the rear yard. So I think,
Ed and Doug, did we need some elevations to confirm what he said about height?
yeah, we have spot elevation shown in the site plan.
No, wait a second, Doug or Ed, do we need some elevations to confirm the height?
Yeah, we mentioned it. A couple spot elevations around the building, John, would be useful.
Right, so I think we've added them, so it'll clarify what's going on there. There's existing, basically the revision would be, I think it's probably about 1.5 feet in terms of the measuring point going down, but it'll still be below, allowable, and it won't have it, the building won't actually be going up, it's going down.
Well, don't forget, you're in a view preservation district.
Right, so we'll, in terms of identifying view preservation, we don't believe that there will be any impact from the street, and we'll focus on the neighbor to the east and see if we can, identify any view impacts there, but we'll get you images.
Well, you're making it higher.
Well, no, the house isn't getting higher, Caesar. So the rear yard is getting infilled slightly. So there's an existing deck in this area where this rear deck is now. So the only addition is there's a little, there's a little bit of addition here, and that's going to be blocked by the adjacent house.
Okay, so you have to look at that.
Yeah, we will.
And pictures work. If you were listening to the earlier presentation.
We'll do that.
A previous presentation had some very nice pictures showing
right.
In terms of view preservation.
Right, we'll put that together. I think everything else that was on the list we can address. I think it's really just the delay in getting the wetland stuff delineated. So we're.
Could you bring up the east elevation view?
East elevation, yeah.
Yeah, and it's the same for the west side. That foundation wall is kind of bare.
So this wall here.
You could hide that wall a little bit with some shrubs.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we had talked about is we're showing that as foundation, like a stucco or a parged concrete. It doesn't have to be because it's so far below grade that you could actually side this, and make it look less severe. Yeah, and we could show some planting on that too. Or grow something on it. It's probably gets enough light that you could actually grow something up it on trellis, which might be nice. So that do something.
And in terms of trees, there's 3 adjacent trees to the project area. You need to look at the root zones and add some tree protection. Put tree protection on the plan where needed.
Okay. So we'll look at that more closely. Again, we're not removing anything, and I think the trees that Suzanne is talking about are off-site trees. So we'll just make sure to protect the root zones.
She said there's 3 adjacent to the project area. So
yeah, I think it's fine.
Adjacent to the project area means she's concerned about the roots.
Yeah. So I think it may be. We can talk to Suzanne. I'm assuming it's about these. That are off on the neighbor's property. So we'll make sure that we don't have any effect on them. Or it could be, we can confirm it with them. It could be actually these trees on the hillside or something. So we'll make sure we know.
And access to the back, she said there's a 34-inch village tree up front by the curb. How are you gonna get back there? You have room to get back to do whatever work you're gonna do in the back?
Our assumption was that we were gonna go around the right side here and where the driveway is and use the driveway as staging and not actually come around past the big tree on the front. So we'll use the driveway for access. And then, there's sort of clear passage.
Is that the west side of the?
East side, come around the east side.
Yeah, on the east side, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the east side, I think that.
The neighbor to the east is uphill, so if any disturbance, all right, it'll run downhill.
Right, yeah. I think it's a little less tight than the other side. And then you wouldn't have to worry about rolling over any tree roots on your way back there.
And Doug, the siltation protection for Barney Brook, I assume we're gonna put something in there.
Yeah, I mean, I believe he's got silt fence already shown and the standard stuff. We don't have any additional
measures, but I think it's adequate.
I forget the grade back there, but is it steep enough to have double filtration?
You could easily put 2 layers of silt fence, 2 rows.
Okay.
Is there, would all the, should all the erosion be outside of the 25 foot by regulation? Like should it be out of that buffer or can it be?
Let's see where it is, John.
All right, sorry, I keep asking, just general questions. All right.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
Okay, any comment, Dan,
No comment, Caesar.
Kevin?
I have, I guess, a general question just about the visual from the, I guess it would be the northern side, on the other side of the brook. What does it look like from that neighbor? What's
Oh yeah, we could do that. We could take a look and see if it's visible from the Barney Brook side.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
From the north side looking south at the house.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, we can take a picture from there, Kevin. Whether it probably won't have any effect on views because the way the train goes, but at least you can get a look at whether there's screening needed for something.
Okay.
Right.
John, isn't that Barney Park uphill from up there in the back, up north?
Yeah, but I think the view from that adjacent, like there wouldn't be any river views because it's sort of like a lump of land as you would looking from Barney Park into this house. I think it would be pretty sort of screened from the river. And there's the Trent building, or what we're supposed to call the Trent building now. Different name. Yeah.
I have a funny story about that. The delivery man looking for Trent Boulevard. We don't have a Trent Boulevard. And I looked at the thing. I said, "You mean the Trent building? You're standing in front of it." So anyway, it's a little aside. Lori, do you have any comments?
No comments. No, thank you.
Mike?
No comments. Thank you.
Sarah, anything in the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay. Before we move on, Sarah, did George join us?
Yes, he did.
Okay, Lori, thank you for your standing in for George during the first 5. George, welcome to the group.
Thank you, Lori.
I hope your transit went well. You're here, so I guess it did. All right, we're done with number 5. Moving on to number 6.
Caesar, just quickly, can I ask Sarah to demote me?
Oh, by the way, before you go, John, Sarah, on Barney Park, you referred to a 6-foot tree. I meant to mention it. You should be referring to trees by diameter, not height.
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay, just a small point.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, see you, John.
See you.
I don't know if I introduced this. 2021-20, 50 Half Moon Lane, number 6.
I found this on the web.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Just going to share my screen. Okay, can everyone see the plan?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
All right. So good evening. I'm Adam Thyberg from Inside Engineering Surveying, Landscape Architecture PC, here representing the Desai Gallo family. I'm also joined on the call by Tassos Kokoris, the architect on the project. For a quick review of the project, we're looking at 50 Half Moon Lane. The applicants are seeking to replace an existing dwelling with a new one. Other parts of the project include a new driveway, the replacement of an existing pool, landscaping, and a new stormwater infiltration practice. Revisions to the plans from the ones that we discussed at last month's meeting are first and foremost a dramatic decrease in lot coverage. While we've added a pool patio, Additional walkways, steps, and parking areas within the proposed motor courts from last month's plan have been eliminated in favor of more lawn, plant beds, and a much more modest driveway, as you can see. As noted in Mr. Hahn's memo, which we got earlier today, we will still require a variance on coverage. We're still a bit over the permittable levels, but the plan as revised is a fairly significant decrease from the existing coverage and the existing condition on the site. Additionally, we took a look at the neighborhood and did some analysis there with the properties that are directly surrounding the subject property at 50 Half Moon Lane. Our existing coverage is 43. The proposed project would bring it down to 16% over the permittable. Obviously, you can see here in the surrounding area, even at our existing coverage levels, we're kind of in the ballpark with the surrounding property and the existing condition. And obviously with our proposed condition, we're certainly at the lower end and a significant decrease, both from our existing and generally the existing condition in the neighborhood. We did some further neighborhood analysis, and I'm going to turn it over to Tassos to speak to the comparative site analysis.
Good evening. This is Tassos Kokoris. I prepared this drawing in order to illustrate the as clearly as I could the physical conditions of the site. We obtained the Westchester County topography. I overlaid it over basically a Google map and cut a section through the most affected residences, which are the two to the east, along that red line that you see. Of course, the site section, which is it's above the photographs there, and the straight up section shows the topography along that line. Obviously, it varies as you move to the north and to the south. I also included photographs or street photos, basically street shots of the affected houses, which are, we have our property and then 45 Half Moon and 55 Half Moon Lane and 15 Hendrick Lane, which is around the corner up at the cul-de-sac. At the very bottom, I've included a section of the proposed construction, an existing section of the house at 50 Half Moon Lane, with a dotted line indicating the new outline, and then sections of the other three homes, basically taken from the photographs and reasonable assumptions, and those can all be verified, but they should be very close to what I've drawn here. So the proposed home, it will be approximately 9 feet higher than the current. The ridge will be 9 feet higher than the current ridge, which represents the extra story that we're proposing to put on the home. Right now it's 1 story. We're making it 2-story. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Well, the major question last time was the coverage, and you did reduce it. You're still not within code, but we'll pass over that for the moment. You didn't really do what we thought we told you to do. Photographs from the impacted properties for their views to the west. We were looking for a picture of the existing house, or as best it can be seen from the homes on the hill to the east, and then penciled in the new elevation. We said 9 feet higher. I presume you mean 9 feet higher than an elevation of 9 feet higher. And we don't see that. And the view preservation is of great concern. And then someplace else you mentioned you're looking for a height variance. To ask for a height, let me finish. To ask for a height variance in a view preservation district when we're questioning whether you have you have the least amount of obstruction and then ask for a height variance. It doesn't seem to be in the spirit of least amount of obstruction when you ask for a height variance and then not show us any pictures that we asked for.
When we submitted the drawing, you'll see on the lower left, there should not be any height variance required. I've lowered the actual building, reduced the floor to ceiling dimensions and reduced it so that from the lowest grade to the roof, we will be.
But somewhere in your submission, the latest submission, I read that you were seeking a height variance.
Yeah, the previous submission, we were seeking a height variance, but
I'm
not.
pretty sure I was looking at the most recent revision. Okay.
Right.
Our engineer and the building inspector will verify that.
Sure.
But that aside, we did not see, unless you're hiding in there somewhere, photographs from across the street looking down the hill at the existing home and how it might look with the new position of the new 9-foot higher home, how the view of the river and Palisades would look.
So Mr. Chairman, if I may, we with the quick turnaround of the submission, our primary focus with this submission was to put before the board a revised plan with, as I said, significantly reduced lot coverage. In addition to that, and the time constraint, just to get this back in front of you, we want to get some feedback, and then we would certainly, address all the other comments and all the other requests thoroughly, including the photos that were suggested for the fast turnaround of this submission and wanting to get this in front of you. We did a quick desktop analysis, and we're happy to provide the rest of those requested materials, with our subsequent.
Yeah, because you last time we had the view preservation at another property just before you. And we went to great detail on what the kind of photographs and what kind of diagrams superimposed on those photographs for the proposed building. And the first comment from one of you was that, yes, we heard that and we know what we're expected of us.
Understood. And that didn't go unnoticed and unheeded intentionally. Again, we primarily wanted to address it seemed like the biggest element that was discussed last month was the coverage. We wanted to address that and get back before you and put something in front of you for feedback at the next meeting. Certainly all of those things are still on our list, and having some further feedback on the biggest issue that was before us last month, the lot coverage, we'll be happy to continue to address the other issues that were brought up at the meeting and in the consultant memos.
I'll admit that you certainly reduced the coverage variance, but further than that, I can't comment on it at this time until we see the whole package. On FAR, there was not enough information and it needs some clarification. Ed, something about the attic?
There will be no attic. It's basically, as you can see on the section.
I didn't ask you. I asked Ed.
Apologize.
You didn't submit a FAR breakdown, so we're not sure what's included and what's not.
We did provide the worksheet.
But when you look at the worksheet, you'll see some. I get the attic part from the cross section. I think that the submission was just a little. It needed a lot of interpretation because of the minimal documents that you submitted. So we're basing a lot of stuff on this one page. The height, we saw that was 35 feet on this page, but we found in one of your letters that you were asking for a height variance. So we were just a little uncomfortable for making full statements on the FAR, on the height. And we see your coverage and we understand that.
Yeah,
So,
the new submission, I don't believe had additional house drawings that we could look at FAR and building height. So that's, that was the issue, I believe. Right, I don't believe that was updated.
Right.
So, Doug, you're gonna get into on a review memo about to clarify the height situation with elevations and whatever.
Yeah, we have it on there, Caesar, and I think when they do update the drawings, they'll have to provide that information. This we just don't have enough information on the revised.
Yeah. And you would probably have to meet offline to clarify what's going on with the FAR. Right now, it's not enough information, so rather than go through a lengthy back and forth on what the village is looking for, I suggest you meet offline or discuss it offline. Are there some other issues? You left the lighting plan to a future meeting, so we'll expect that at a future meeting. You did nothing about the planting plan, an arborist report about the trees coming out and the trees going in. You got 22 trees coming down. And we need a replacement plan. Elevations, photos. I'm going to go around the board and ask. Dan?
Pretty much you hit upon the issues of the photos of the nearby neighbors' homes in reference to the proposed structure. And the height does go from 26 feet up to a proposed 35 feet. So again, it's a larger number, but again, we would have to see how it looks in reference to the neighbors.
Kevin?
My only comment is to emphasize that we need more information in order to evaluate the view preservation aspect. So just echoing what Caesar already said, the more information you can have to help us visualize that question before us, that aspect that's unique to this application would be helpful next time.
Thank you.
George?
Yeah, I know you guys heard the issues last time about the view preservation from another applicant. And if you remember correctly, that application, there was serious concern about the siting of that building. And in respect to the view preservation, since you really don't have addressed that in any way, shape, or form here yet, I strongly recommend that you start with that, because our goal, or our mandate really, is, if you follow that view preservation law, is that we have to figure out a way that what you're building is the least amount of impact on other people's views. And it's not that you can't build a building, but it has to be done in a way that is sensitive towards what the other neighbors are. So it's kind of unique in a way that you have to design for views that are beyond your property. And that's important. So I just look at what you're planning, and you're building a wall, basically, straight across your property, that I think is going to, in any shape, way, or form, have the most impact on views from the adjacent neighbors. So I strongly recommend that you start with that, figure out how much you're impacting, because one of the first questions we're going to want to know is there a way to do it with less of an impact? And that's part of, as I understand it, the mandate of this view preservation law. So I suggest you read it first, so you understand where our kind of mandate is, so that you can kind of design towards that. And then as far as coverage, no, I firmly believe that any new application, regardless of what was there before, is a new application, and it's a new project. And you have to come, these are laws, they're not just like guidelines. So one needs to follow them. And if you can't follow them, there has to be a real reason, a hardship, so to speak, of why you can't. And that's my perspective on new construction. That's completely different than if this was an addition to this house or something else. So that's how I interpret this.
Okay, from that, I get that when you come back, you need a reason why you're 16.1% still over the code. And to emphasize what George said, I will read you a pertinent sentence from the code. The planning board shall also review the proposal in the VP of View Preservation District as to the best siting. And you know what that means. Does it need to be up on a hill and not down by the hill where the existing house is? The best siting, dimensions, and configuration of principal and accessory structures so as to cause the least possible obstruction of the view of the Hudson River for neighboring properties and adjacent public property and rights of way. That means the cul-de-sac up on what's that, South Hendricks Road. There should be pictures from up at the top of that cul-de-sac because that's a public right of way. Moving right along to Mike Smith.
So I'm trying to understand the lack of clarity on whether a height variance is needed. From what was said, it was initially thought that a height variance would be needed on the first presentation, but on this one, that a height variance would not need to be needed. So can you tell me how the two plans changed in terms of height? How did it go from needing a height variance to not needing a height variance?
Yes, there is a section of the ordinance that says that if there is within the building envelope, if there is more than a 15% grade change, then there is an increase from 35 feet to 40 feet of the allowable height. And when I laid out the house originally, we had that 15-foot grade change, but it was not within the existing envelope of the house, the existing building envelope of the house. It was within the new building envelope of the house. So that no longer applied. At that point, I basically reformatted the building to lower the overall height, reduce the floor-to-floor heights, and bring it into compliance from low grade to ridge at 35 feet.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, you're pretty firm on what you need to do. A reason for any coverage. We really went over the view preservation, and in addition to, you got to follow up what George said, because as I read, siting is part of what we review, and you have a lot of space on that property for siting and dimensions. The lighting plan, you got to do a lot of work for trees, and you have to straighten out your FAR. Sarah, anything from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay. Any further comment from any on the board? Dan? Kevin?
Good. Thank you.
George? Mike?
No further comments.
Okay, you got your work cut out for you.
Yes.
And if you have any questions about what that work might be, it's the time to ask them is now.
Thank you. We'll communicate with the building inspector and Mr. Hahn, and if we have any questions, we'll clarify with them.
Thank you for the feedback.
Okay, thank you very much for your appearance this evening. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Bye.
Number 7, 2021-15, 2 Ardsley Avenue East.
Hey, John Malone, representing Heckman Greenberg. This is the project that we had before you a few times already for the addition of a pool on the side of an existing house off Broadway. I can share a screen quickly. What happened? There we go. So we have a few outstanding comments. The coverage variance that's required and the rear yard setback requirements and the pool location variance requirement. So the one thing that came up.
Is there a side yard variance also? Because of,
I believe it's the rear is where it is. It's
okay, because there's 2 rears and 2 sides.
yeah. I think there's by code. I think we can only have 1 rear. So the bottom of the page is considered a side. Am I in the right sheet? No, sorry. The bottom is considered a side, and then this line that's doing this jog because of this easement or because of this intrusion into the lot, this is considered the rear. So the point at which we're doing that intrusion is related to that odd side or rear yard condition.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Well, I think the pertinent question last time, the reason you have to come back was because we were concerned with the incremental segmenting of previous and new coverage variances. Like, I believe there were 2 previous coverages, now there's a third, and segmenting is something specifically looked down upon in other state laws when it comes to SECA. It doesn't apply here, but the spirit applies. And you were to review those, and could you review them verbally for us? What were the previous coverage? Because it a 75% over a coverage, it may sound big when you ask for it in one shot, but if every second year you ask for 25, it's only 25%, then 2 years later you ask for another and another, it's still 75%.
Right. I think
and if the overall coverage, when you all is said and done from 3 or 4 different variances, adds up to something that if it was asked for in one shot, we wouldn't have said yes to. So why would we say? So one has to ask the question: should we say yes to yet another increment when you add it to the others? We wouldn't have said yes to it. I think I said that correctly.
Right. I mean, what we did submit.
But go over it, John.
Let me pull that up. I just don't. Just give me 1 second, Caesar, because I don't have it in the.
It wasn't easy for me to follow. I was reading these long dissertations by the zoning board, and I really didn't get at the variances, the numbers that I was looking for quickly. As a volunteer, I don't get paid the big bucks to spend an hour looking at it.
So there's 2 variances, one from 2006 and one from 2011. And to be clear, the current property owners, bought the house in the last, I think, 2 years, so they were not
That's
involved.
understood, but coverage is coverage.
Right. But in terms of the concept of, say the segmentation is understood. I think that you have a large project and you strategically break it up to have it happen over a period of time. So that, just to be clear, that's, obviously not.
Well, now you have a small piece of property and strategically, not a single individual doesn't, but still, you blanket the property. What was the 2006 coverage variance?
So the 2006 floor area, where's the, I think it's under, oh my goodness, hold on. This is, let me just see.
Well, isn't it currently something like 76% over or 78% over?
It is over. And again, we provided analysis that much of the neighborhood is, because it's a neighborhood that is sort of down zoned. So there is a zoning analysis that sort of describes what that is. I think, the board at the time granted this one unanimously, sort of, I think they determined that it was not atypical and similar to what was there, given the existing house that was there before. So I think that's what it was. Let me just hold on and see if I can interpret which one is coverage associated with this. Hold on 1 second. Since I can figure out from ours what the actual 13. So the variance requirements shown here, I don't think they are not calling out a proposed coverage variance in this one. So
with this pool,
at the time, I think what this may be in 2006, right? The change to the coverage code that reduced the coverage for undersized lots. So prior to, I believe, 2008, the coverage for undersized lots was the same base coverage as if it was full size. So I believe the coverage on this lot would have been 4,800. So the reason that this first variance doesn't include a coverage variance is because the project would meet the coverage that it had in 2006. So I think the understanding at that point was that you could have a neighborhood that has some undersized lots in it, and it's not, and the intent of zoning codes at that time when they were made is that the house sizes were similar from property to property. So an undersized lot was given the same coverage as a standard size lot, and then that would bring a consistency to the development. I mean, I think that was the theory that I understood at the time. So sometimes in 2008, the code was changed. So in this neighborhood, because many of the lots are 50% smaller than allowable, their coverage effectively dropped by 50%. And I think that's why you see in this neighborhood such large coverage overages. It's not that they were added to, it's just that those were the size of the development that was there. The second variance in 2011, I think, comes after that. And then here you see, and when you look at, we haven't looked at this submission closely, but I think at the time, I don't know what was not taken into account for this number of 40%, but sometimes people don't take into account patios or something like that. I'm not really sure what it was, but basically at this point, the board had no opposition, even though the variance was quite high, because it was considered, it was related to the upzoning of the district from.
What was the latest variance? What did you say, 40%?
This is the latest variance, yeah. It's 40%.
What was the number? I thought I heard 40%.
It says, although the lot's total coverage exceeds allowable coverage by 40%, this excess occurs because of an upzoning in the district.
All right, so it's 40, the last variance was for 40% variance, okay.
Right. And I think, I would question whether that was accurately represented in terms of, whether they included all the patios that they needed to or something like that. Because
so what you're saying, it could have been worse than the 40%.
Yeah, it could have been worse than 40%.
But that's not good for you, John.
No, well, I think in the sense that in the end, what we're proposing here is an addition of 225 square feet, which is, right now there's an existing flagstone patio in this area, and the only proposed change is changing, that flagstone patio into a pool area. So there's no visual impact to neighbors. There's no stormwater related impact from additional impervious surface because we're providing underground stormwater. There's no visual impact from Broadway or anything like that. So there's not a visual impact or disruption associated with it. It's just a change in the side yard that is surrounded by retaining and has driveway access to an adjacent house, right? So from our perspective, there's no real impact. It's not an addition on a house. There, from one position to the next, you couldn't really, from the existing to the proposed, driving by this house or walking by this house, there's not going to be a significant change. In that sense, it might be a different discussion if you were adding an addition or something like that. But also, Caesar, I think, the result of where we are, we can look at it again relative to the neighborhood as a whole, is not a relationship to some kind of overdevelopment of this lot. It's typical in the area, and it's a result of an upzoning in the area.
So correct me if I'm wrong, the existing is 78% over.
That's how we interpret it, and there's been no change since.
And you're looking for how much more?
I think it is going.
Like something like
no, it's 169 right now, and it's going to 178. 169.
So what percentage increase?
That's a 9% increase.
Okay. Does that include the new gym set? Are you aware of the new gym set?
I'm aware of it as of today. So no, it doesn't include the new gym set. The owner didn't believe that it was furniture. It doesn't have any. It doesn't connect to the ground. It just sits on the ground. It doesn't have footings or anything like that, and can be relocated on the property. We can add it. I haven't measured it, but we could add it if the board wants us to consider it building coverage. We can add. I think it's probably under It's probably about 60 square feet of coverage if you look at its footprint.
This pool is, you're asking this board to approve the shoehorning of this pool into a very tight spot. And then, I probably not, you've just heard about it today. And then in the middle of this tenuous process of shoehorning a pool with all sorts of variances, at least 3, and then compounding those variances on coverage. And then in the middle of this, to add more coverage and don't tell anybody. I find that hard to appreciate. You're going to have to go.
I mean, if you want to speak to the owner on that, I believe she's.
Not really. If they want to comment, they're welcome to in the public session, but we're not there yet. You're going to have to come back and show that Jim said on the set of plans where it intends to be, if it's going to stay there, included in the coverage calculations. And to be fair with you, as I said, this was a tenuous, this may tilt the scale in the wrong direction. I don't know. You'll have to see for your next presentation.
Okay. All right.
I will let the board to comment. Dan?
By gym set, is that just a playground type of gym set? Is that what you mean, Caesar?
I only saw it from the street. I guess one of the jobs for John to do would be to explain what it is and
okay.
whether it's coverage and it expands the already, as I said, the already tenuous coverage variance that we're asked to shoehorn this pool into. I don't know. We'll see. Kevin? I'm sorry, Dan, anything else?
No, I'm in agreement with you, Caesar. Yep, 100%.
Kevin?
I don't have any other questions.
George?
Yes. So John, a couple questions for you. First of all, I must say, if you remember the last time that you were here, I was questioning if that wall was curved, remember, from the photo that we saw. And sure enough, I'm driving in the city now, and I go by Ardsley Avenue every day. And magically, the day after, I said, I'm going to go see if this wall is curved, because it was bugging me. Well, it's straight. Guess what? And I saw that it was straight. But I also did see the...
George, I have to interrupt you because the way you were starting that conversation, I thought you were going to say it's curved, and I was going to be seriously freaked out.
All right. Well, okay. But I must say that when I drove by, I also saw the playground set right there. And I said, I don't think I saw that on the drawings, but I kept driving. I didn't worry about it. But the question that comes to me about all this is, we rely on basically the architect and stuff like that, to kind of explain to us some of the history behind the houses and such. And we can't blame the owners. It's not their, it'd be nice if they said it, but part of the due diligence has to be to kind of describe the history of this, why you're coming for a relief of some kind of variance. And that has to do with the history of things. And I even think it's in the application that Ed has done, that it's your responsibility to say, yes, there were variances that were done to this property and such, so that everyone sort of knows this from the beginning. It's a lot easier. This guy has gotten very gray, and it seems like every time you come, it gets grayer. And I must say also, driving by there, I said it the first time I saw it, I thought this was quite tight. And I will now say that, being that I've driven by this so many times, it's beyond tight, it's intimate in terms of what you're trying to do. And, there's a nice big fence in the back there that's kind of obscuring their backyard from both the other backyard to the east, I guess. No, to the south. And so when you say that this isn't going to have a visual impact, I don't know if that's necessarily true maybe it's true about the visual impact, but it's certainly going to have an impact on the neighbors. Okay.
So
a pool is significantly more, let's say, active than this patio that you're planning to do. So there's that aspect. Now, everyone comes for pools all the time. You've done probably a dozen pools in Irvington already. And the thing I always look for is the breadth that's around the pool. All right, that there is an area that, and especially for the neighbors, this is really tight. This is the tightest I've ever seen. And the plan makes it look larger than it really is. So if no one's driven by there, I suggest you do, because it is pretty intimate, in my opinion. So my two things are, I just wish that on the next application that you do, that you're a little bit more forthright about the history of things, so that, you know, everyone doesn't have to kind of dig this stuff out. And it is also, correct me if I'm wrong, your responsibility when you do these applications to do this, because you have to fill in, have there been any other variances on this property? So that needs to be done, and that needs to be a little more thorough, at least on the next time. Those are
So
my.
just in response to that, George, and we will going forward, I think one of the things about the variance for previous variances is that that has been a new request, or a new request that's been enforced. We had been under the assumption that the village had access to those. Those are not something that we can get out of the system. There are certain things that are uploaded onto the system that we can get access to from the computer. So we have to ask Ed and Sarah to provide those to us and search them out. So in the future, going forward, we have been, but that's sort of a change. It certainly wasn't an intention on our part to hide it, because this is, you know, village information. It's not, and it's also village information that, you know, would require a request, or the FOIA request for. So it's not something that we were trying to hide from the village or from village officials.
Okay, well, I don't know. I'm sorry if I thought this is sort of like my experiences in the city. Everything is online. You can find it, and it's there, and it's pretty transparent. If you're saying that's not the case, and that this is a new thing, okay, as long as in the future that we don't have the same hiccups as we have right now.
Yeah, I think going forward, we'll ask, you know, on any projects, we'll ask to, you know, cover the variances, and we'll ask that we can submit them. I think in terms of the tightness of the pool, just quickly, if you let me respond to that, you know, the pool's distance from the property line is much farther than what would typically be allowed, right? You know, even though we're asking for a variance because of this projection here in the rear yard, 20 feet is what the pool distance is, and this pool is more like, I think, is it 35 from the effective property line, which I would say the effective.
That's a plan graphics thing. I'm talking about, again, good or bad. I drive by this place all the time, and
right.
So,
but just to be clear, you know, the pool is really 45 feet away from the neighboring property line, the affected neighbor. And we also had a letter from that neighbor. I think you guys were concerned that neighbor knew that this was going on, and whether they had any concern about this. And, you know, they responded that they don't have any concern, and that they do know what's going on. So in terms of,
There's also a neighboring driveway through there, John.
Right.
There's a driveway going through there, but in terms of distance and change of impact and change of activity, I think, you know, typically if you understand that a pool in general is allowed to be 20 feet away from a property line, it's not like that pool is being shown 20 feet away from the property line. So it's more like 45. So just in general, that's why we're willing to go to the zoning board and ask for this request. Right.
Speaking of the tightness, this is a technical issue which could be settled at some time if we get beyond our approval. The structural integrity of the retaining wall, because of this pool construction, is subverting the sub base of the retaining wall to the east. We discussed that last time. I presume you're looking into that.
Well,
So,
what we did was indicate that we could.
But sooner or later, you'll have to address it.
Yeah, we indicated that with additional notes that indicated that a geotech would be involved with the excavation. It's very hard to bring geotechnical expertise until you really start the excavation and see what the extent of the rock is.
Okay.
Again, we were hoping to obviously to not do that until we had variances that know that the pool could go forward. And I think, you know, again, there's no concern from our part that a pool in this location isn't feasible for some reason. I think it's just a matter of more or less money in terms of removing the rock and how much rock and removing it carefully, and rebuilding a retaining wall if there, or underpinning a retaining wall if there was an issue with it. I don't think there's anything that goes to overall feasibility. I think it's more about how much it will cost. And we've agreed at least in terms of notes, that we can have geotechnical engineering oversee the excavation once the project's.
Obviously, no blasting, right?
Right. No, that would potentially be a problem, I think.
And if the rock is if you have to raise the pool beyond the elevation that's shown, that you'll have to come back.
Right, of course. Yeah. I think one thing that I don't know if we told you, Caesar, this rock that's being found is very soft. It's a sandstone, so it's something that you could take out by, excavating. It's not like a granite is what's being found.
It's more of a shale. Oh. Yeah. I didn't get to Mike Smith. Mike?
So I agree with everything that George said. And what troubles me a little bit is I think that it's misleading to look at the setback going to the property line to the neighbor when I think what is tight, or to use George's phrase, intimate, what makes it intimate is the retaining wall. The space between the house and the retaining wall. To try to shoehorn a pool there is what is intimate. It's not on the other side of the retaining wall, because on the other side of the retaining wall, because I also not only drive by, but walk by there all the time, is you have the road, and you have the property line. So what we're talking about really is the space between the house and the retaining wall. And my question, John, is my understanding is that under code, there's one place on this property where you would be entitled to build the pool, but that's not feasible. And that would be, from my perspective, facing the house, the northwest corner of the property. Am I right about that?
Northwest corner of the property.
Yeah, so I don't want to call it there inside. So facing the house off of Ardsley Avenue, looking at the house, it would be all the way in the northwest corner.
West or east?
No, I don't think so, Mike. I think in a condition where there are two front yards, there's really never a clear location. You might be thinking like back in this corner here.
Yes, I am. Where you have I am thinking about that. So that would be a permissible location. So where you want to build the pool is in what would otherwise be an impermissible location, and the question would then be why? What's the
the answer to that, the quick answer to that, is that the lot is atypical in the sense that it has two fronts, and the way that the pool location code was written did not take into account conditions where you have two fronts. And so we typically, whenever there's a house with more one fronts, we end up going back to the zoning board. And almost in all cases, they understand that that's an atypical condition, and that's what the zoning board is there to do. And that's the role of a variance, to provide relief in a condition where there's an atypical lot condition. So.
Okay. I have nothing further, Caesar.
Anybody else on the board to rethink after having heard Dan, after having heard George and Mike? Anything new, Dan, Kevin? Oh, no. George, you have anything further?
No, no. I think Mike was saying exactly what I was trying to say about it's a plan graphic thing as opposed to a visual thing. So that's it.
Okay, Sarah, anything from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay. John, you got your work cut out to include that Jim said on the plans, and come up with a new coverage if new coverage is required.
Okay.
And that's about it, I guess.
Okay.
And it's still a question of the overall question to us, and we'll have to decide it after we see the Jim set included. whether or not we want to move forward with a third coverage variance in addition to the other variances that are necessary. I mean, I guess if there was one, it'd be different then, but when you look at the overall picture of several variances and on this in a tight situation, as two of the board members mentioned, intimate or tight, it gets very tenuous. So do your homework.
Yeah, I would say
Thank
that for us, that, you know, from a planning perspective, I say it's too tight, okay, regardless of the history and whatever else. And
Yeah, I agree.
sort of what the zoning board has to figure out is, you know, all this double, triple, whatever it is stuff. But it is, John, that it is a very tight site for putting a pool in. And I'm frankly not convinced that that's appropriate, so.
Right. I mean, I think if you put up with me for a second longer, I think.
Absolutely.
You know,
John, we put up with you already for two other sites.
I know. But you guys should be able to shut it down when you want to shut it down. But in terms of the tightness of the pool relative to the house, that's a decision that the homeowner is making. You know, we had a project in front of you on Fargo Lane where the pool is part of the house. It's attached to the house, and it's actually closer than what's shown here. And, you know, and that's a decision to look out of a pool directly out of your living room, and the pool is right there. So for me, the discussion about whether the pool is closer to the house is not necessarily a planning board issue in the sense of the impacts that it has on neighborhood character or the impacts that it has on adjacent properties. Having the pool very close to the house actually reduces potential impacts on neighbors, right? Having it tighter to the house has less impact than it would if we were proposing it in the Broadway setback, or, you know, in closer to rear yards to get it away from the house, or things like that. And, you know, the fact that it's low on the ground and already protected from view from the east with an existing retaining wall means that, you know, part of the tightness that they're getting that they're in this location has a benefit to the neighbors. So, you know, you may feel that it's tight from a design perspective or from a use or a functionality perspective for the owner, but I think that's, you know, their position on that, and different people have different thoughts on that. So that's all I would clarify. Like, I think for me, this location is probably the location on the site that has the least impact visually to character, or least impact, and then least impact on the two adjacent neighbors based on both its elevation and where it is on the site, and the kind of buffering that's already mature buffering that's already in place. And that, again, this is the reason why we would like to, you know, request these variances, and that's why we would propose them.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, part of what you're saying is they really didn't have a choice. Okay, let's be honest. There's a retaining wall that they can't take down. There's a driveway they can't take down. This is the only place they can put it. Isn't there, you know, up to them that they want it closer to the house or not? They have no choice. Okay, this is the only location that you think works, and physically works because of the conditions of the site. So I wouldn't say that this is a owner's decision to put it closer to the house. It's a site condition. And
right. No, what I was saying was an owner's decision was to accept the functional tightness of it relative to the house, George.
Okay, and so what I would do is, and as you know, John, that what we're supposed to look at is not just this, but what happens to the other ones that come along. And that's why the coverage becomes such an important thing. So that's part of what I think our mandate again is, you know, not to have someone like yourself come back with another applicant and say, well, you gave them this over here, now I want to do that. And
right.
that is part of, as I understand it, our role. So that's
right.
That's.
I mean, I think our point would be that request would be a request to the zoning board, right? In terms of whether.
Well, we're responsible for things like coverage and scale and a variety of different things like that. That's what I understand we're supposed to do. Okay.
Right.
What they're supposed to do is to figure out about percentages and if you really need this relief, you know, what is the reason for it? And we're supposed to also understand that as well. So no, I see this as a physical thing, not an analytical thing. And that's it.
Yeah, John, any one thing might be borderline, but when you look at the aggregate of the whole thing, the tightness, the coverage, the past coverages, the variances for the rear yard, for the side yard, it gets to be a different story than if you were looking at one thing. And as George said, the tightness of it is part of an aggregate of issues. When taking in the aggregate, it may not be, it's a lot different than looking at it as a singular point.
So one of the things I could offer then is when we come back, I could write a narrative that describes the rationale for each of the variances, right? We could clarify that in a letter form, if that would help.
If that'll help.
Also, like I didn't want to get into it before, but that understanding the history of this thing, I don't think anyone really understands it precisely. Everyone has a kind of a, you were saying, well, who knows if they did it this way or did it that way. I don't think Ed and Marianne have a clear picture. Maybe they do. I don't know about those history. But I don't really, for me, I don't really care about that much. What I care about more is like, does this site, allow for a pool to be in here? And will someone else be coming back with such an intimate site asking for the same thing? And then all of a sudden we have a dozen of these things all over the place. Now, I must say, I'm all for people having pools. So it's hard to be so angst about this one, to be honest. I wish they could put a pool in here, but it seems damn tight.
And to amplify what George, it's not only coming back the next guy next year or next month with something similar, but something similar that's a little bit worse. And then, the legal term of slippery slope. As with the children, give an inch, take a yard,
Right.
down the road. And that's an important factor to us, that we don't want to be stuck with something that we're sorry for next week when another application comes in.
Right. I think from the perspective of the owner, though, they don't want, their project, which, they feel is worth reviewing with zoning board, to be limited based on some future project that may not exist that doesn't involve them. Right. So that's just, I know, I understand what you guys deal with in terms of trying to limit negative precedents, but at the same time, from the owner's perspective, I think you just have to be careful to be looking at the project that's in front of you and not put limits on it based on
No, but John, no. But John, the owner has their own roles and responsibilities, and we do as well. Okay. And part of our responsibility is to be part of this planning of this village. Okay. To make sure that we're keeping the rules and regulations that are set up in a comfortable way, and we're following those things. The owner is not responsible for that. We are. Okay, so we come from two different camps. So that's why you're here. You're here to try to convince us that this is appropriate, that this works, and you're going to explain to us why that is. So no, I don't follow that. Nothing against the owner. If I was them, I'd be fighting like this too. Okay, but that's not my job here. My job.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm not trying to argue that it's not your job to review it. What I'm saying is that the limit of the review shouldn't be expanded to some hypothetical that isn't actually being proposed. I think sometimes that happens, that someone says, well, there could be a worse project, and we don't want this to be the stepping stone to where, that's to me is an odd response, right? I think that I understand looking at what's in front of you and making sure that what's in front of you meets the requirements of the zoning code is certainly, I'm not questioning that.
Right, and I guess you just missed what I was saying before, so we'll just leave it at that. Okay.
Okay.
I think that's it, John.
Yeah, I'll add the narrative, Caesar.
And just to stick up for you, John, I don't think any of us, including George, thought you had any idea that you were trying to hide the previous variances. I think we know you better than that. It's just that you need to do better in looking at it. I'll look at it as, I'm sure you weren't trying to hide it.
Right.
I don't know, I thought I had another question. The pool equipment, does that require a variance? Is that in the setback?
No, it's allowed to be in the side or rear yard setback. It's just not allowed to be in the pool setback. So it's within the 20-foot.
I don't remember if we discussed the noise issue with the pool. I guess it's far enough away. I remember we talked about.
It's far enough away, and there's, in terms of the noise, it's, we can provide, NRC stuff if you want, but it's the noise associated with this equipment is very, very small. And having it up against the house and shielded and deflected that way is actually a good thing.
All right, now make sure you include the various percentages of overages, the current overage, the new and beyond the existing, and what's allowed, so that we get a full understanding. And again, for the owner's purpose, it's unfortunate you bought a house and you didn't know there were previous coverages, but it doesn't obviate the fact that the land got covered. It's a tight lot, and the previous coverages used up a lot of the coverage, and you're asking for more. And we have to consider what the previous owner did, because it's there. It's not mythical. So unfortunate for you, you're stuck with what the previous owner did.
Right.
Okay. Sarah, we did a lot of discussion since I last asked for public. Is there any public?
No.
Okay, moving right along. Thanks, John.
Okay, thanks.
That was number 7. Moving to number 8, 2021-26, 2 Clifton Place.
If you're here to represent the application, if you could please hit the raise hand button, please.
I see a Peter Gatto there. Are you representing 2 Clifton Place?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Hello. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
I saw you. No, I don't. No, now I see you.
Okay. Can you hear me, everybody? Hello.
Yes, I hear you.
Okay. Thank you, board. Thank you, chairman. Thanks, everybody. So, yeah, so when we submitted this application a while ago, we had some interaction, some feedback from your department there, and we just got notice to appear tonight early this afternoon, and also some comments back this afternoon from Han. So I looked at the comments. We can go through those in a second, but
before you do, I want to make a. You say you just found out about it. Sarah, doesn't the agenda go out? Didn't the agenda go out 2 weeks ago? Sarah?
Yes, the agenda went out 2 weeks ago.
So there was at least 2 weeks ago that this meeting was noticed with this on the agenda. So I didn't want the impression on the record that you suddenly found out you were on for tonight. You may have personally been, but it's been on the record 2 weeks ago that this was on for this evening.
And you noticed for the meeting too.
Okay.
Well,
now we got that
I
straight.
want to belabor the point, but I got no comments until this morning from Han. And I got an email from Sarah today to say that appear before the board. So that's it.
There was part of your application when you applied for the thing, you were applying for this particular meeting. That was why you had that deadline. All applicants know that.
Okay, that's okay. Great. So, so in terms of the project itself, the client is selling the house, as you may or not be aware, and to do so, we're sort of we're basically tasked with documenting the undocumented areas. So, in particular, in this case, There's a wooden patio in the backyard. In the drawings you see before you, this was existing photographs. I think the drawing you have is it's indicated on the Hudson Road side. It's screened by trees and bushes. The patio has been there since 2000, as I understand it. We actually spoke with the National Trust about this, and they support the patio doesn't have any negative effects, as the house is listed in National Registry since 1977. Some of the comments I noted also was from Han. Some we could discuss. Some I think are fairly straightforward. The fact that there's a question about blocking visual impact. So since it's on the ground, I don't think it visually impacts anything. The lighting I found out about in time for today was there's only a couple of indirect lights. So in terms of dark sky, that's covered. That's the gist of what we're looking at. I know there's a note about the trees that are there. That's the deck is built around the patio themselves. And in terms of the other question, so then the main thing is the coverage aspect, which we submitted to you. And in terms of the spreadsheet, the coverage is a bit over.
A bit, huge amount over.
Could you describe, be more specific about a bit?
Yeah. So it's sort of.
I think a bit over is an understatement. Do you have a number?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a subjective word. I understand that, but especially at that.
It's a mathematical calculation. I don't know how you can get subjective out of that.
Well, a bit in terms of the big picture of what we're trying to achieve, especially in.
No. About the coverage. It's not subjective. It's a mathematical calculation.
I said my chairman, sorry. I said my term of what may have been subjective in terms of speaking.
Oh, okay.
My view is bit because based on the size of this enormity of the site and how it's tucked away in the corner nice and neatly, and how it doesn't affect the lawn or the grass or the neighbors in any capacity. But yet when you reflect it in this chart, as I was starting to say, here, the number comes up, it's 10,358 greater than allowable is the new total.
Yeah, and from what I'm told, it's not all the.
Yeah, I think we need to clarify the coverage.
Yeah, but not all the coverage that should be in that calculation is in the calculation. You'll have to go over that with the village engineer.
Yeah,
yes, and let me finish.
Sorry.
We in a rough estimate, given what's not shown as coverage that should be shown, you're over 100% over the allowable. Now, there's a little bit of history here. Several years ago, maybe 10 years ago, this boardwalk, or whatever you want to call it, was built without any approval, and a violation was issued, which nothing ever became of the violation for building it without approval. And now you're asking to legalize something that we would have never legalized in the first place if we had been asked before you built it. Not you, but. So I'm not sure where you're going with this. This is a non-starter, asking us to, and do you have a use for this boardwalk other than it's there?
Yeah, it's used quite often, as you know. This
as
is
what?
Well, I'm about to get to that. It's used quite often as a supplement to the home. So basically, the home. A supplement to the home in terms of the character and how it works and what it's used for. So the home, as part of the National Registry commissioning.
Go over the supplemental use. What is the supplemental use?
I'm trying to explain. I'm trying to explain. So the use, what happens is everything comes below. Everything comes to the people rent the house.
Excuse me, people what?
When the people stay at the house. And
is that a legal use?
I believe so.
You need to be sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what am I'm trying, so
I don't
basically,
see any special permits for that use. It's a single family home in our records.
okay, so what I know is that it's
So
on,
now, in addition to the illegal boardwalk, you have illegal rental. Okay, this is going well. Go ahead.
it's on the National Historic Registry, and so part of that, they have to give house tours. And I know that serves as a function of the corner of the property where they meet and
I
gather.
don't see a special permit for that use either.
No, they don't have to give house tours. In order to give house tours, they need to get a special permit. That maybe the National Register can't trump our zoning. And our zoning requires a special permit for house tours.
We can clarify that. I'm not aware of
You
that.
don't need to clarify it. That's it. I know I wrote the law.
I'm not questioning you. I'm talking about our client. Okay,
Oh,
so,
okay.
That's a third illegal use this is really going well now. This is getting better. Go ahead.
maybe that should be it. I really am not sure what else to say. I'm in receipt of the letter. I'm here before the board on behalf of the owner, try to document undocumented patio.
Well, it's not going to happen at 100% over in all these illegal uses. I would like to ask the board their opinion. Dan?
I'm in agreement with you, Caesar, about the illegal uses.
Well, about the 100% over.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge,
this boardwalk.
huge issue as well. Yeah.
Not sure
It's a
why it's
huge
there,
issue
why
as
it was built, and
Yeah, it's a big problem. Yes, I concur with you.
Kevin?
I would agree that the magnitude of the excess coverage is a problem. And so I guess I look forward to some of the responses that have been requested for further information, clarification.
George?
Yeah, no, there's nothing tangible here that I can grab onto. That it seems like this was built illegally. It's being used illegally, and they want to legalize it without really clarifying or kind of describing why. So no, I think that if they want to sell this property, they should bring it into compliance to the code that's required. Period. End of discussion.
And let Mike Smith.
I agree with everything that's been said. I have nothing to add to it.
Okay, unless you can magically make this all go away and get back into compliance, I don't know what you might come back with, but you're certainly welcome to come back. I think the sense of the board is that that boardwalk is not a go.
Okay, I'll advise my client.
Anything from the public, Sarah?
Yes, we have somebody raising their hand. Lino Sharetta.
Go ahead. Ms. Sharetta?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, can you all hear me okay?
Yes, I can't see you, but that's okay.
Yeah, let me see if I can.
That's all right. Just speak.
Yeah, I'll just speak. Sorry. Yeah, members, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Lino Sharetta, partner with the law firm Blakely, Platt and Schmidt. I represent the Sykes, who are neighbors at 3 Clifton. With respect to this property, we just want to know for the record that, we do oppose this application for all the reasons stated by your board. And we appreciate the board noting the illegal use of this home and the issues that are involved with this application. So again, all has been said in the record by your board, but I just want to note we appreciate you looking at this and obviously doing your homework and due diligence on this application. So again, we just think that this is an illegal use and these things need to be rectified before this thing can proceed. So thank you for your time. I know it's been a long
Before you
meeting.
go away,
Yes, sir.
in addition to the illegal use, does it present a negative impact on your property? Other than, a use may be illegal, but is there something that's bothersome with the illegal use?
There is, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Obviously, there's a history to this property, and we believe it's being used for purposes other than a single family, for rental, for other types of uses that are, again, not in compliance with the code. And yes, that does affect my clients because they are, adjacent to this property. So to your point, Mr. Chair, yes, it does affect our client. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for your input.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Thank you, members of the board. Thank you.
Is there anything else out there?
Nobody else is raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, we're done. Moving right along. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Peter.
Thank you.
Number 9, 2020-21, 202 Hermits Road.
If you're here to represent the application, could you please hit the raise hand button?
Good evening, members of the board. Dave Barbuti, architect, representing the Robinsons for proposed 3-car garage, detached. I'm in receipt of Mr. Hahn's recent memo. And also,
Before you start, are you aware of a letter that we received from Jonathan Elwin and Heidi Jellenhouse?
yes, I received that this morning.
Okay, please, after your general presentation, please address what they wrote about.
Okay, so as I said, I reviewed. I thought we took care of all the comments from Mr. Hahn's previous comments. There is some housekeeping on some paperwork that I thought was included in the paperwork. I thought we covered number 1, number 2, number 3. Number 4 on his list was a survey certification, is something that I had just received a day or so ago. So I will forward that to Mr. Marin's office. And looking through some of the landscaping comments from the landscape architects, I guess I just have a few things to clean up on that, which we will take care of.
You need an arborist report on mitigation to the trees where roots might be impacted.
Right, I saw that. I believe that was new. So
and replacement trees and and screening for the garage. I don't think there was much information on screening.
So there wasn't much information on screening because a few things. So the location of the garage is probably surrounding it with the adjacent property owner at 204. There's a lot of heavily wooded area at that point. I'm not sure that any screening would survive due to the large canopies in the spring, summer, and early fall.
You'll discuss that with our landscape officer.
Excuse me?
You'll have to discuss the viability of screening living or dying with our landscape architect.
Right.
Or have your arborist.
I'll have a conversation with them.
You need an arborist to have that conversation.
Right. Just go over those concerns that we have. There's also a lot of rock ledge in that area, so I'm not sure about how the vegetation would survive, but that's a conversation I'll have with the consultant.
Now, if I recollect, we asked for a rendering, which you have a rendering, but it's of the garage doors. The concern was the view from the neighbors, and I thought, if I remember correctly, you were supposed to present a rendering of how the garage would look from the neighbor's point of view.
So that I don't recollect. I just remembered, I wrote down in my notes that a rendering of the garage. So, I mean, I can get another one taken done. That's not a big deal. I guess I would have to.
The concern is how it looks from the neighbor's house. So that rendering, any screening that will live would be pertinent to our review of a rendering with screening from the neighbor.
Okay. I guess I should knock on their door to see whether or not they would allow me to take a photograph from their property.
You're not gonna knock on my door. You can knock on their door.
No, their door, that's what I said. I mean, the issue is, I mean, it's, the garage is 25 feet away from their property line, the common line. It does not require any zoning variances. I did read.
You can go to your property line, and just, we want to see what it looks like from the direction of the neighbor, that's all.
Okay, all right. Is there anything you want?
By the way, your coverage, while I'm looking at my notes here, your coverage calculations need to be clarified. You need to go over that with our engineer and building inspector, because the coverage calculations need work.
All right, as I said before, I thought we had that taken care of on the revised drawings, but I will have a conversation with Mr. Marin and Mr. Hahn and review them to see where the error lies. As far as the letter from the adjacent property owner, is that something that you would like to go through, or how do you want me to handle that?
Well, they had, if I remember, there's 4 general points about deep test hole, and that's something that's an engineering thing that could be done later. But if there's rock all over the place, could you go over why you have a fair understanding that the rock that's on the site will not interfere, or there's a good chance you'll be able to find a spot to put the stormwater collection system in without hitting rock?
Well, so I think the location that we have, which is to the south of the garage, it's kind of goes away from any of the exposed ledge. And when we did the renovation to the house 5 or 6 years ago, there are Coltech units further to the south of the existing house. So I think the further away you get from where this garage is going to be located, the more soil you're going to encounter.
All right, well, that's something that could be dealt with in the engineering phase. And they had they talked about the view from their property, which we already talked about. And we already talked about an arborist report, which was their number 3. Right. And their number 4, I believe, was the dark sky lighting. Could you go over you have a full understanding of what we need from the arborist about root mitigation and replacement trees and tree protections for existing trees to be added? You really need an arborist report.
No, I get that. I see that. So that's not an issue. We'll work on that. Number 4, I guess they have existing floodlights or some sort of lighting on the house. I mean, I could talk to the owner to see how they could redirect that. That I was unaware of.
Any new lighting for this garage?
So we do not propose any exterior lighting on the garage.
Okay. Dan, you have any comment?
No comments, Caesar. Thank you.
Kevin?
No, thanks.
George?
No, thanks.
Mike?
No comments.
Okay, anything from the public? Sarah?
Yes, John Ellen would like to speak.
Am I on?
We hear you.
Okay, it should come on in a minute. I don't know why I would not have my visual. I don't see me coming up visual, but it says you can hear me, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So I've heard a couple of the things addressed that we brought up in the prior meeting. Certainly, Mr. Barbuti is welcome to come to the backyard to take a photograph in order to provide the rendering from our point of view. Unfortunately, I did have a photo here that I could show you had my video been working, but it's pretty clear that there will be an impact to the view, and that rendering would be very important to us to understand how big of an impact. There's currently a structure there, which is a tent used as a garage. that's 10 feet tall, and we see it clearly. The idea that it would be twice the height of that, or nearly twice the height, and maybe slightly raised in elevation, clearly is going to be a problem for us, especially given the already large facade of the house. It just adds to the bulk of our view shed there. So yes, come take a photograph, and I look forward to seeing the renderings. The more important point is I just cannot understand how we could allow this to move forward without understanding where the water runoff diffusion is going to take place. The idea that, quote unquote, the further away you get from the building, the deeper the soil, that may be true in the backyard. And you have to understand, as a group, we've lived here, my wife's lived here for 60 years, and I've lived here for 35 years. I know this property like the back of my hand, every square inch of it. And exactly where they're proposing this system to go in for stormwater is clearly, just visually, either on the rock ledge, or you can see other rocks protruding from the soil there. And it's not going to work. And the issue we have is, if you approve this without it, then the new owners, when they buy it, because it's our understanding that the current owners aren't planning to build a garage, they're going to sell it to a new owner. The new owner is going to say, well, I've got approval for this garage, and the soil's untenable, but you have to allow me to do it anyway, or come up with some other alternative. So I don't think it's a big hardship. I mean, I put in my septic system up here. They put one in. I called the guy with the backhoe. He came out. I gave him a couple of $100. He did a deep test pit, and we were done. So I really think it's ill-advised to allow a plan that's going to add 900 square feet plus additional driveway impervious surface, not knowing for sure whether the system that they're planning will work. You guys are welcome to drive up here and have a look at the site where that plan is planned to go in. Yeah, and I work from home, so anybody can come knock on my door anytime. The other point is, if that doesn't work and it requires some sort of fill to raise it up, that could potentially cause the actual structure to be raised up. So anyway, you've got the gist of it there. I just don't see how the board can allow it to move forward unless they're sure that mitigation is going to, or that stormwater is going to work. Yeah. So,
Hey.
Right. Okay. Go ahead.
Hey, are you done? I didn't want to cut you off.
No, I'm done.
Okay, thank you very much. Sarah, is there anyone else out there?
Nobody else is raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Now, we've asked for deep test holes prior to approval in the past. And given what the gentleman said, I have no reason to disbelieve him. What about trying a deep test hole in the vicinity of your stormwater disposal system? That was for you, David.
So, I mean, it could be done. Generally, in the past, in I believe this municipality and other municipalities, it's always done when there's a machine on the site, so we don't impose the fee of bringing a machine in and out. That's really up to you guys.
Well, we just had a recent property where there's rock all over the place, and before we even went any further with further review, we asked for a deep test hole to find a spot where there wasn't any rock. So I feel we need to do that here.
Okay. Okay. And that gets witnessed by Mr. Hahn or Mr. Marin.
Ed?
On. You just schedule it with Doug.
Okay.
Okay. Doug, you okay with that?
Yep, no problem.
Dan, any further question, given what we now heard? And
No further questions, thank you.
with the member from the public commenting? Kevin?
Oh,
Kevin?
No.
George?
Perhaps just a alternative location that you know is more feasible. Then maybe you don't have to do the perk test. Is that possible?
Well, so I mean, like, as I said, the further down I go towards the rear of the house, I mean, I could relocate these units closer to where the units of the house are. I mean, it would be another 100 feet of pipe to get to it, but I'm sure I can make that work.
Yeah, I'm just trying to save you the fees for getting the.
Yeah, I mean, that, I think that would work. I mean, I could also get, landscaper to go out there and, dig a 4-foot hole, 3 feet in diameter to see what we got that far down the hill. I mean, that I can do. That would save, the expense of getting machine in there.
I'm just trying to help you.
No,
That's,
thank you.
what you just said sounds okay to me.
Okay. All right. And then once again, I get in touch with Doug and he would
Right.
witness it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
He's not going to dig the hole.
No, you are, Ed.
Okay, wait for me. Caesar, Mr. Allen.
Let me finish with Mike first, Ed. Mike?
No further comments. Thank you.
Ed, you were going to say something?
Mr. Elwin would like to speak again.
Jonathan, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So where are the current, where's the current stormwater system that you're saying you can run 100 feet to? As I face the house?
As you face the house.
It's in the rear of the property, and basically where he's showing the existing drainage, he's got 6 large Coltex for the size of this structure, and he's got an overflow going to a level spreader towards the rear of the property. So it's in the opposite direction of your property.
Yeah, I understand that, but the idea that where the garage is sited to get around what would be the left side of the house to the Coltex spreaders that are in what I believe to be the rear yard. Again, owning the property for 60 years, I know there's a giant rock ledge there that I just don't see how a pipe gets from anywhere where the driveway is into the backyard. I just don't see it.
Well, that'll be up to him to figure out. Thank you for your input on that.
So what's going to happen, Caesar?
Well, we'll see what he presents to us at the next meeting.
Okay, so he's going to do some exploration.
He's going to do what he needs to do to address the comments that were made about the potential of rock.
Okay. All right.
So I get it now is that, basically, David's not really going to do this work. This is going to be sold and left for the next person. And Jonathan's concerned about this not being done thoroughly. So David, I would make sure that you can prove that you can do this alternative location.
Yeah.
And in a very thorough way that Doug says, yeah, that can happen.
Okay.
That way Jonathan is, that there isn't any, we don't have to see this again. That's I guess my big thing.
Understandable.
Well, you got to come back for all the tree work anyway, so.
Right.
Yeah, and the coverage cut. Well, you said you did that already, but make
Well,
sure.
like I said, I'll revisit it again and
Yeah.
I'll have a conversation.
Yeah. Well, the big things, the rendering with the screening from the other property, we talked about that, and the arborist, and showing that this drainage is going to work.
Okay.
Not that down the road somebody else gets stuck with it. Garage goes up, you go to put the drainage in, and well, maybe that's a way to handle it too. Mary Ann, is there such a thing as the sequencing that they have to put they can't build a garage until they prove the stormwater works? Construction sequencing?
I think that's a question for Doug or Ed, I don't know.
Can we, if we
You
ever
can
get
make
to
it
a
a
resolution,
condition.
can we say you can't build a garage until you put this thing in?
You can make that part of the resolution.
Okay. That would be an alternative.
The resolution being,
down the road.
I'm sorry, Ed, what is it that you want in the resolution?
If you can put in the resolution the construction sequence, if the board felt it was important.
Yeah, but Caesar, what is it that you wanted to happen before something else?
Make sure that the drainage collection system can be installed at the location proposed before the garage gets built, as opposed to the garage gets built and there's no place to put the water that's going to come off the roof of the garage. I would hate to see that happen.
Okay, so that the drainage has to be installed before the garage gets built.
Right, if we get to that.
Right.
Because he's going to try to work it around that. There's a high level of confidence that he can go to this other site and hand dig, or however he was going to dig without major expense of a.
Okay, well, when we after the next meeting, we'll have a better sense, and then if you want that, then
That's Plan B.
Okay.
Okay, David?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, we're done.
Thank
See you
you.
next. Thank you. That was 9. Moving on. For anybody that's listening, there's 3 more, 10, 11, and 12. We're doing 10, 20, 21, 24, 49 Kingsley Close.
Hi all, this is John Malone, Fergus Malone Architecture, representing the Arkins. This is a project to expand or replace and expand a deck on the back of a property at Legend Hollow. In order to determine coverage, we used the process that we've used in the past, where the coverage is limited based on the original subdivision coverage. We received notes from Doug on this. I had a question about Caesar, do you want me to review it? I know it's late. I can just go through the notes, or I can go through a description since it's the first meeting, whatever you want me to do.
Just hit on the coverage, the FAR, and the height. Are they all in compliance or not? And
Yeah,
especially the
they're all in compliance. The thing that I just had a question about the wetlands buffer. So the subdivision.
We're in the same boat as 47 Station. You need to delineate the lines for the water course, the wetland, and the buffer. It's not on the plans.
So, but I think the way that the subdivision, it had a wetlands line delineated on it, and it had a 25-foot buffer and a 50-foot buffer. What I would propose is we can take that 25-foot buffer and add a 75 to it. Is that okay? Because it's way down the hill, and I think
as long as it's delineated on the plans that we see.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, just use the new numbers. It's a smaller project where you don't need to get it delineated.
Okay.
Just take the old wetlands lines and just use our new buffers.
Right. So the buffer, is that what it was? The buffer was expanded from 50 to 100 for the secondary buffer?
I think during the subdivision, the rules were different than what they are today.
All right. I'll show the 100-foot buffer, and then
It's a small enough project, John, where we don't need to really get into. I mean, you're gonna have to do a wetlands report anyway, and just make sure your silt fence is right.
Right. Okay. And then the allowable coverage should be revised to the 4,815. That's is that someone looked at the actual subdivision language? Okay,
Yeah.
because we got the number from a subdivision plan, but I guess that's different than what's actually ended up on the plat, right?
Well, the plat, we went to the plat.
Okay, as long as you got the right one, we'll just change it to what it is. All right. In terms of
now, right?
What's that?
Now you can make the deck bigger.
Yeah, I know.
Well, what do you think the first question was from do we have 400 extra? Yeah.
John, where did you get the number from?
from the subdivision plan, the ones that show 3 lots on them, the hand-drawn plans.
Huh.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume
I'll
the
send you a
written
copy
one
of the subdivision.
supersedes it.
Yeah, so what was interesting is in the subdivision, it goes by subdivision lot number, which doesn't
Right.
reference anything. So it could have been, and that number's not anywhere. There's not one house with that coverage allowed.
The 4815 is just an odd one, yeah.
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 And your
Also-
number was odd too, which is why I said, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right. And then Ed pulled out the approved the subdivision plat.
We'll revise it to, whatever is the
Yeah.
one that seems most current.
We're comfortable with that, John.
Okay. And then the proposed material below the deck, Doug, on another house in Legend Hall that was just deck related work, we used the area underneath the deck as sort of a storage area by providing gravel and some piping rather than put a storm system in. That's what we wanted to do here because we thought it was sort of a similar kind of impact. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
The stormwater, is that too close to the foundation?
So this, in terms of, it's not really concentrated stormwater, it's a deck drip through, Caesar. So the amount of deck drip through that would have, the rain that would have hit the ground would be similar to the deck drip through that's going to hit the same area. So I don't think that'd be a concentrated. Also,
Right.
there's
You gotta
basement
check-
there.
Check with Doug about calculations on the stormwater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think everything else we can. So yeah, I don't think there's anything.
The comment from the landscape, Susan Nolan, was to identify, give an ID to the species of screening plants.
Yeah, the screening plants are identified as XX right now,
That's
which is not very clear as to
that's
what
an-
use that would
that's an
be.
The height or the width of the trunk?
That's an invasive, that's an invasive species,
Yeah, it's probably invasive XX.
as long as it's not triple X. Permits, screening, and the coverage is within the, not only the village code, but it's within the subdivision code, I guess. And
Yeah, I mean,
Those are the only coverage limits.
Yeah,
There
those are
aren't
the only
separate
coverage
village
limits.
limits.
oh, okay. All right, you got any questions, Dan,
No questions, Caesar. Thank you.
Kevin,
No, thanks.
George,
No.
Mike,
No questions.
Sarah? Anything from the public?
There's nobody raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, John, you have any further questions of us?
no, I'm good. I got what I need. Thank you.
Okay, we're done here. Thank you,
All
John.
Well, I'm actually saying goodnight tonight. I'm not staying for the last two.
Oh, come on,
Good luck. No, I'm gonna go eat dinner. Thank you, guys.
Bye, John.
I don't think George ate yet.
Shaking his head sad. All right, see you later.
Yeah. Number 11, 2021-23, 25 South Continent Street.
You're on mute if you don't know that.
Now can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Very good. And try to get my video to start. Okay.
No, we were looking at you. Now there you go.
Okay, very good. All right, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Brian Crowley. I am the architect that's been hired by the homeowners of 25 South Continent, Kumon Poor and his wife, kind of clearer. And before you tonight is our proposed renovations to an existing single-family home. If I could share my screen, I can walk you through some information, present the project in general terms, answer any questions the panel may have. I am in receipt of Mr. Hahn's comments that I received earlier today. I've gone through them, and we can speak to those after I give a general presentation, if that's okay with everybody. All right.
Yeah, give the presentation so we all know what's going on.
Am I sharing my screen yet? Okay.
There we go.
Oh. All right. Can everybody viewing see the screen? You see the surrounding context map on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So just to give everybody a general sense of where we are in the village. So if you, all right, excuse me. So here's Broadway. We come down Main Street, make a left on South Continent, and the residence is towards the end of the street, right down here. So if you were to take a look at this, and then you can see we simply did an overlay, keyed all the existing homes with numbers, our project site in question right here, and these numbers obviously correspond to the following photographs. This picture here is the existing residence that's under discussion as it sits today. Current homeowners bought the place 2 or 3 months ago, and they're looking to do some significant renovations before they move in. Front of the house, rear of the house. Just to give everybody an idea of what's being proposed is the whole the roof and the second story is being proposed to be removed in its entirety, along with this sunroom on the rear of the house. And we would like to replace the home with a gambrel style roof with a shed on the front and the back. So the intent is to transform this home into something similar to this. So these are some other images. They didn't make it into the presentation, but others from the neighborhood. You know, it's in keeping, I think, with the local vernacular. It would be appropriate to the neighborhood. But this gives you an idea as what the homeowners would like to try to turn their home into. Going down the street, just from Broadway towards the home, these are pictures of the surrounding context, just up and down South Continent. Homes vary in size and scale and style. It's pretty diverse, but this is going down the street towards the home. This is the neighbor to the immediate left of the house. This is their home. This is the house to the immediate right of the home. And again, what we're proposing isn't, in our opinion, any larger than surrounding homes. So this just gives you an idea of what we're trying to fit into. If I were to go to the drawings, current survey as of about 6 weeks ago. So 2-story framed house. The proposed renovations do not expand the footprint of the house whatsoever. There is a deck, well, excuse me, it was a deck at one point that was turned into a screened-in sunroom, and there is an existing deck. The structure for the existing sunroom, which seems sound, is being proposed to be maintained at this time, and this sunroom would be turned into a covered yet unenclosed deck with a new deck on this side of the house. Okay, we do, as I said, I'm in receipt of Mr. Hahn's comments. There are a couple of items that will require variances. As the house sits now, it exceeds the lot coverage as it is. So
by how much?
Right now we are over by Let me see here. If the
361 feet. 361 square feet you're over.
For the house proper
Oh,
itself.
the allowable.
Yes, correct.
Now it's exceeded by 26.4%.
And that calculation comes from all the existing walkways and patios that were on the site. So part of the reason we had the property resurveyed was to accurately document all the coverage, because it seemed like there had been a lot of things installed over the years that weren't necessarily recorded. Maybe not. I was not able to find any documentation on file with the village. I showed it recorded. So
Yeah,
what we're
we
trying
have,
to do here-
to get into that, there was an undocumented walkway, patio, and vinyl deck. Is that included in the coverage? The existing coverage?
Yes, sir. I did include them, but Mr. Hahn's comments said that they should be excluded because they were undocumented, quote unquote. So I could easily do that.
Well, give it both numbers, because when it's undocumented, we'd like to see it as part of the new application.
Sure.
Excluded from existing.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Make it two different numbers.
exclude the undocumented.
But I mean, by exclude, I don't mean don't mention it. I mean, make it separate.
Oh, I understand. But for the purposes of this submittal, they are included in my calculations.
Okay,
So
you can leave that
basically-
number, you can leave that number alone and then just say, part of that number is this number of undocumented.
I understand, not a problem. So we obviously know we have a site coverage issue. What we're trying to do is improve the issue, but even after our attempted improvements, we are still going to be over the allowable lot coverage. It would be by, I believe,
That's where it's 361 feet. What's allowed is 1366, and the proposed coverage would be 1727. Right, Doug?
I believe so. Yep.
Yeah.
So what percentage is that over?
26.4.
yeah, so while we are trying to improve the existing condition, I do understand that we are still going to be over, which would require us to go to the zoning board of appeals for a variance for the coverage. Totally understand that. So basically, if we remove all the existing patios, vinyl decks, walkways, documented or undocumented, what the clients would like to do is remove all that, expand it's an existing sunroom, as I said, but elongate it and transition that into a covered deck. And then on this side, on the corner of the house, just have a open deck with stairs leading down. And all this other area in the backyard that's currently patios and walkways, we would just try to reestablish lawn. They have 3 young children. They want to try to maximize as much backyard space as they can. Let's see here. Interior, pretty significant renovations. The whole first floor is going to be completely opened. And then the second story is going to allow for 4 bedrooms upstairs, 2 baths, relocating stairs and whatnot. And you can see here from the roof plan, it is gambrel style roof, front and rear sheds with a modified hip on the back. And this portion covers the covered deck. And if you were to look at the elevations existing, obviously, and this is what they would like to transition it to. They would like to gambrel style, front and rear sheds, cedar shingle style, asphalt roof shingles. The backside, this here is the covered deck area that would have a pony wall instead of, in lieu of railings. This is the open deck, stairs leading down. The understructure would be clad with some kind of either cedar or vinyl skirting, just to conceal the underside. This is a good profile of the house, you can see. So I am aware that we have a lot coverage issue. We were trying our best to stay within the FAR. Another one of Mr. Hahn's comments was, which I concur with, is that we did not account for the garage square footage. So by the time we account for the garage, we take the 250 square foot deduction that's allowable. We are going to be over our FAR by just shy of about 200 square feet based on my napkin calculation. I come up with 196 square feet is what we will be over the allowable FAR, which is minimus. I think we're allowed, our allowable FAR is 22,355. We'll be over by 200 square feet. So hopefully the Zoning Board of Appeals doesn't take that to be too much. But based on the comments received from Mr. Hahn after looking into it, as I said, I concur. So an FAR variance is also going to be sought after. And as far as setbacks go, if we were to look at the existing, or we can look at the proposed, it's probably better look. So the existing structure, which is now a sunroom, is 27.8 from the rear yard setback. We need 30. So it's a pre-existing non-conforming condition. What we are proposing to do, because we do want to maintain the structure, is simply take the sunroom, elongate it along the back of the house. So the variance that we would be requesting would be the 1'9" variance, the 30 minus 27.7, 1'3", excuse me, variance from the rear yard. On the front, the entry porch, they would like to widen the porch by approximately 1.5 feet and deepen it by about 1 foot. You can see the front of the house is 31.3 from the front, from the road. So if the expansion or the widening of the stoop, however minor it is, it would obviously be past the 30-foot front yard setback. So that would be another variance that we would be requesting. So it would be a front yard and a rear yard variance.
Now, those expansion of the front and the back, those coverages, those increased coverages, part of your calculations?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep. So again, in the rear, pre-existing non-conforming, we're not trying to make the situation any worse. We're just asking for permission to widen what's already there. We aren't bringing the house or the residence, the structure, any closer to the rear yard setback than it already exists. Just looking at this, the old survey that went back to like the 60s when the house was built, it had the side yards, excuse me, at 10 foot. This new survey obviously shows at 9.9. So I guess that would be at the discretion of either the planning or the zoning board. But if we technically would need a variance to just go vertical, again, not expanding footprint of the building or anything like that, if we would need something to go vertical, given this is less than 10 foot technically, that's something I would like your direction on, so I know how to proceed with things. Aside from that, the other comments that were received from Mr. Hahn, the coverage calculations, which we've touched on briefly, FAR, which I concur with, that we touched on briefly, the front and rear yard setbacks. So although it's not the primary residence, if they are looking to widen and deepen the front stoop, that would be beyond, it would encroach into the 30-foot front yard setback. So seeing how it's not part of the home, would that still require a front yard setback variance?
Ed?
So you have to look at our exceptions for walkways and for encroachments. The patio and the stoop and the steps and the walkway don't need variances, but the roof structure does.
Exactly, and that's what I thought. I spent quite a bit of time trying to digest all this. So you can see here, I do have 2 columns providing supplemental support for.
How much does the roof span into the setbacks past those posts?
18 inches.
Okay, you're allowed 30.
Which is, I believe, an architectural projection. I think it can be within 18 inches, if I'm not mistaken.
You're allowed to project 30 inches into a setback with a overhang.
Correct. And if you were to look here at one of our side elevations, you can see on the front, this is we're essentially bringing the front to the face. This front column, which is supporting the cantilever, that's basically at 30. So this front overhang If,
No, if you want to draw the setback line horizontally up, if the post is on the property, on the setback line, then you can go 30 inches out. You've got, I don't know how much shingles it is, but it doesn't look like 30 inches to me.
no, I believe we'll be okay. So I'm not concerned about the columns, not concerned about the overhang. I was asking specifically about the stoop and the stairs. And I understand and agree with what you're saying based on my reading and review of the code. I was under the impression that the stoops and the stairs and the walkways, the front yard setback does not apply. So I don't believe we would need a front yard setback variance.
You need to put the dimensions on the site plan.
Yep,
for the overhangs and stuff.
No problem. That's easy. Okay. Mr. Hahn would like to see some topography. It's a relatively flat site. I can either go into GIS and pull down just contour lines and overlay them on our site plan. But he wanted a couple other things that is probably going to require the surveyor to go back out there anyway. So I can ask that a couple spot elevations on the corner of the house be provided that we can work with.
Yeah, that would be acceptable.
What would that be? Which
The
one?
spot elevations around the perimeter.
Okay, no problem. Okay. So view preservation overlay. Obviously, that's been a pretty hot topic this evening. I understand the issues based on what other presenters have gone through and what I've been listening to. I don't believe I've given you what you may necessarily want to see. But if we were just to go back to this image.
Let me ask you, are you changing the height?
Yes.
It's going up 1 foot 3 inches. So we are increasing the overall height of the roof by 1 foot 3 inches. We're still well within the allowable height, buildable height of 45, but we are increasing the height by 1 foot 3 inches. Yes, sir.
Well, you'll have to look at the view preservation issues considering that increase in height.
Yes, and this house here is really the only home that would be directly affected by it. And I just happened, this is a random picture I took while I was on site. So this is the backyard. So if we were, let me see here.
Oh, this is.
If we were standing, you come up the walkway, you walk down the walk, stand in this corner, and you look in this direction, this is the image that you see. So these are all the patios and walkways that are being proposed to be removed. And this is the house I think that would have any direct impact by the additional 1 foot 3 inches that we're adding to the home. And from what I see, you know, there's kind of a mix of some deciduous and some evergreens. These were taken about a month and a half ago. So foliage was just starting to come in. So when these trees do come in the full bloom, I mean, they're very mature trees. They're considerably taller than either home. And, you know, half of them appear to be evergreen anyway. So I don't think there's going to be any issues with view preservation, but I can certainly go back to the site and I can go up onto this street and try to get some snapshots of view corridors in between homes that kind of capture our existing house at least.
Well, you got the existing house, and then on that picture, superimpose the 1 foot or whatever the measurement is, increase in height, superimpose that height onto the picture.
Yeah, yep, I can do that. Yep, that's not a
But
problem.
it has to be from, not at street level. I mean, these people have, you know, I don't know how you do that. You may have to knock on the door and say, look, I'm trying to preserve your view, I'm trying to make view preservation for you, and I need to show that we're not impacting you. Would you allow me to take some pictures, whatever you have to say?
No, I totally understand what the board would like to see. The only thing I'll reiterate is that while we are making the house a few inches taller, I do believe the existing foliage kind of negates it by the time the trees come to bloom and everything.
All right, we'll try to take a look
But
at it.
I will. I totally understand what you'd like to see, and I have no problem doing my best to provide that. That's not a problem.
The next street is Dearman, right?
Excuse me?
The next street is Dearman. The street to the east is Dearman.
No, Dutcher, isn't it?
Dutcher, South Dutcher. Yep. So here's Google Maps. So this is This is that yellow home in the picture I was just showing. So I can get up here and I'll try to get some shots like in between the houses and that kind of thing.
You know the address of the house on Dutcher that's immediately to the rear of your clients?
This tells me it's 26 South Dutcher.
Okay.
So I'll go up there and try to get a couple, pictures in between the homes to see if there's any impact. Do my best to document that and present it. Let me see here. He has there's a comment here about exterior lighting. So, I consider this package to be a relatively comprehensive schematic design. So what we were trying to do here was present to the planning board our schematic design, and before we get into a full construction document phase, address any issues that may or may not come up. So I do not have a lighting plan developed yet. Any kind of exterior lighting that would be proposed would be probably these basic sconces adjacent to exterior doors. They would obviously all be specified with shrouds or shields to keep the light down, mitigate any kind of light trespass that may otherwise be there. But
And you're familiar with the dark sky legislation in the village, right?
oh yeah, I mean, I'll obviously go back and review it again, but I do understand what's been asking for. But again, there's
Okay.
there's no proposal of any kind of large bug eye spotlights on motion detectors around the perimeter of the home for security reasons. Or
I
there's
think if you just check that it complies with that section of the code, I mean, I think that's sufficient for now. I don't know if you have to go into the lighting.
Yeah, I mean, at this phase, I wouldn't. I would just go in there and I would just kind of do a review of the code section. I would put some general notes on the plan. I mean, I can locate the exterior lights. I know where those would go. But short of doing like, circuit diagrams and all that kind of stuff, I would just probably show them.
Notes on the plan.
Yep. The next comment here refers to a landscaping plan. So we have not had, the homeowners and I have not had those discussions about any kind of proposed landscaping. I don't think there are plans to landscape the property. The only thing we've really discussed is trying to reestablish a lawn for the kids in the backyard. If you were to look at the front of the house, you can see that, there's the only landscaping that would be removed and replaced would be this, just this aesthetic material around the perimeter of the house, because the majority of that is going to be removed or destroyed just by virtue of the renovation we're trying to do. So again, I'm not a landscape architect. I can incorporate another one of the comments on here referred to tree preservation. So again, when the surveyor comes back out, I'll ask him to spot the trees that have the 8-inch diameter trunks or greater. But there are no plans to take down any established trees, anything like that. It would literally be limited to just around the perimeter of the house.
I think what she was getting at is that if there are trees in the work area, that you have to show some form of protection, so equipment doesn't bump into them or run over the roots. And
understood. Understood. So
it needs to be shown on the plan that whatever trees are there needs to be show some protection.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I totally understand that. That's not a problem. But as far as a landscaping plan, when we resubmit this to you, hopefully as soon as next month or for next month's meeting, if we're able to, I do not plan on developing a landscape plan. On the site plan, I can certainly identify the trees with the 8-inch caliber. I can show that the typical tree protection details that would go around it.
That's typically acceptable. What you're.
Yes.
All right. Great. That's not a problem.
And as far as the other comments, we can, if you really have any questions, you can give me a call, but they're.
Yeah, I mean, these were,
comments.
everything I saw in here was a good portion of it is housekeeping, so I can, if permissible, I'd like to try to call you in the next couple of days to go over these in more detail. I don't want to belabor it now. I understand the hour, and in fact, I went on for 3 hours.
Sure.
But there's nothing on here, with the exception of a landscaping plan. Everything on here is relatively easily addressable. I don't take issue with really anything.
To take Doug's lead on what he said about plantings, protect the trees that are there, and if you come up with some planting, aesthetic planting, that would be fine.
I mean,
would be, how do you access the rear? You're going to be able to access the rear because it's pretty tight.
Yeah, so there's this gate on the right-hand side. There's also a gate on the rear corner of the house on the left-hand side. The guys will only have, I mean, the only structure that we're really doing here is we're gonna have to dig a couple pier footings just to expand the deck. There's no need to get heavy machinery or anything.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, it should be, it's a decent amount of just grunt work, but I don't foresee it being a problem.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the gist of it.
Okay, let me
happy to answer any questions.
let me poll the board here.
Sure.
Dan,
No further comments, Caesar. Thank you.
Kevin,
No questions. Thank you.
George, George,
Nothing, thank you.
Mike,
No questions.
Tara, anything from the public?
Caesar, Ed Marin.
Yeah.
We have one resident who refuses to identify themselves who would like to speak. I think we need their name for the record before we can let them speak.
I agree. If they send something in writing for the next meeting, we'll take it under advisement, but I'd like to hear the person and where they live. I mean,
yeah, it's important.
I mean, is it relevant? I mean, it could be, 2 miles away for all we know. No, so no. Anything else? I do have a comment that doesn't affect the planning board, but are those asbestos shingles that you're going to be working with?
No, not that I'm, I mean, as far as the removal of existing, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
The house, the original house goes back to the 60s. It's vinyl now. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
When that vinyl was done.
Just passing by in the street, when I see those kind of shingles, I see asbestos. Okay.
Yeah.
If they're vinyl, they're vinyl.
They're vinyl. I don't know what's under them, but that's something that would have to be further
Like I
evaluated.
said, it's not an issue for the planning board, but
Caesar, we'll take care of that at building permit.
yeah, okay. This isn't a historic district, but it's what's the correct? It's not what? Mary Ann?
Contributing house,
Yeah, it's
Right.
you
not
are
a
correct.
contributing building.
Okay. All right, I think we're done. We canvassed the public. You know what you need to do.
Yeah. So I mean,
Oh, by the
basically-
way, there was another comment there's a village tree out front. Maybe
Yes. Yeah. That
make
when
sure the tree is still there when you're finished.
we will do our best. when
And
when the
whatever
surveyor
tree-
comes back out and locates those additional items, they'll be sure to make their way onto our site plan, our plot plan, and we'll identify them correctly with the appropriate protection details and whatnot.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. That was a good presentation. Thank you.
So next steps forward, can I just contact Mr. Hahn directly, talk through his comments and address his comments and put together a resubmittal package? And that's all I've heard. No other
Yes,
comments?
Doug, that's okay, right?
Yes, yep, definitely.
Okay. And then Doug will direct you to the building inspector as needed if necessary. Okay?
Understood.
Oh, Caesar?
Yes.
The person that's making the comments would like to speak.
Are they going to identify themselves?
They're just raising their hand. I'm not sure.
Okay, well, as long as they understand they need to be an ID.
Hi, good evening. I was having a hard time with your system. My name is Wilson Gago. I live next door at 23 South Continent. And I want to welcome our new neighbors. We look forward to having them. We did want to mention that some of those trees that are on the photo are actually on neighboring properties. Perhaps when on the left, when you take a look at your landscaping plan, you could take that into consideration. And we also put down some planters. There's some planters in place there. We just ask for consideration when you do the construction staging to be conscious of that. But everything else, we definitely wish our neighbors the best. And thank you for your time.
Well, we did ask for a tree protection presentation, so I'm sure they'll include the trees that you mentioned. Correct?
That's not an issue whatsoever. Happy to do so.
Thank you for your input.
Thank you so much. And good luck to our new neighbors.
Thank you. Sarah, anybody else?
No.
All right, we're done with that. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, board members. Have a good evening.
All right, last but not least, number 12, 2021-22, 61 Riverview Road.
Hi, good evening. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi.
Good evening, Steve.
Yes, nice to see you guys. Good evening. I'm sorry that to be getting to you guys so late in the agenda, but ultimately, yes.
Well,
I'm the architect.
you stayed awake, so you're okay.
Yeah, no, I'm still here. I'm still here, guys. But I'm the architect. I'm here to represent my client. The name of our project is the Ryan Residence. Ultimately, we are applying to remodel an existing rear yard patio. This patio, if I can share my screen. Can you guys see that all right? We got a spinning wheel over here. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So ultimately, we have an irregular lot, which is non-conforming. The area that I'm highlighting ultimately is the area within the setbacks of the property. We are looking to, there's an existing patio that was there. Our client basically is introducing or has introduced this portion onto the property, onto the rear patio. The existing patio is around 316 square feet. The proposed is going to be around 132. Some of this was an existing stair that basically directly led to this path down to the driveway, and also directly led to the rear yard as well. In doing the remodel, we're trying to create just a direct path to the driveway. And I can take you through the drawings to kind of show you what's been done. The current patio is unfinished and unusable at the moment because the work started getting the permits from the town. But once the client realized what was necessary to complete this job, is now trying to make amends and ultimately do what's necessary to get this approved. So what we are looking for is our existing is around 17.3%. So we're looking for additional building coverage to get us to around 18%. The existing patio, as I was describing, basically this is the area that was filled in. There was no separation, at least no physical separation from this point to the planter. And then this is the landing that it basically sits outside of our setbacks that you're seeing in the site plan. What's being proposed and what we're trying to accomplish is the new stair with a railing that takes you down to an existing path, down to the driveway, and basically filling in this corner. And building a retaining wall, which will initially the client was going to do a kind of like a fire pit, but understanding the proximity to the home, we're going to now utilize it as a counter with storage below, and adjacent to that would be like a barbecue built-in unit. And there's a small retaining wall here, maintaining the existing planter, possibly relocating some of the planting that was there. And eliminating this curved portion of the planter. If I was to show you this in elevation, This would be like the side view looking towards that portion of the path that basically is inside of our setback. This would be the rear view of it. This would, again, bringing it down to counter height. This would be the barbecue end of it. And these would be the steps down to the path. And we are also showing the other side of it where this would be the stairs again going up. This is the parapet walls. And this would be facing the rear yard. And this would be where you come down to the existing garage. We'd like to also show some photos. You can see that it's kind of tucked in there, so you don't really see it from the street view as you come down the road. Showing the neighboring homes as well. This is where we are in relation to the other properties. This is what it currently looks like as a rear view. Again, this is going to be taken down to the existing countertop. This is the plantings that are currently there. This is the line of the setback that is being referred to. And you can see, looking towards the back, that the level of coverage at the rear. So this is actually looking at the adjacent rear property and looking down towards the house. So you can't actually see the patio. This was taken probably in October and November. We do have some letters from our neighbors understanding that they don't have any issues with what we're doing, and they support. They do in some way support what we're doing, so there's no issues there. So we're just looking for to get some advice on how to bring our patio back up and get it to be usable for our client.
And there's new drainage. Doug, did they address the drainage?
The current, the existing was draining into the planter, actually draining into the planter. We are introducing a drain that can drain back into either the footing drains that are there or back into the plant, directly into the planter. We can probably get some, we did receive our notice from Han as well today, and we do plan on addressing the items that have been listed here, and I believe he did identify one of them being the drainage. So we figured that would be a point of discussion as well.
All right, if you included in Doug's letter, there's probably comments from our landscape person, Susan Nolan, and she mentioned there's regulated trees on site. You need to show them on the map, on the plans.
We certainly can do that. I know that we're not intending to affect or to remove or relocate any of those trees.
Right, but we want to see where they are, if they may need tree protection because of the activity. The root zones have to be protected, that's all.
Caesar, could I ask a question on this drawing?
Go right ahead.
Now, I'm confused about why you need a rear yard setback. If it looks like the line to the closest point on the patio says it's 30.75.
Yeah.
That's existing, correct.
Yeah, Mary Ann, there's one piece of the new wall that is over the setback line by just a few inches.
Oh, but that's not on this drawing.
It's there. If you look carefully, go to the, you had your cursor on it. So anything over 6'6", go to the 34.04 arrow, please. Yeah, right there. So that little piece can't be over 6'6", and that's the only statement we have on it.
I don't think that would be an issue because we are dropping.
Yeah, we're not sure because it has to be from existing or proposed lowest grade. So just check that for us.
Yeah, okay, and if that's below 6'6", then he doesn't need a variance.
Exactly.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, thanks, it answered it.
I remember that issue, but neglected to write it down. That's the height of the barbecue, is that correct?
changing it to a planter now, a cooktopper now, right?
Countertop.
Countertop, yeah.
That would be on the opposite side. We're looking to put that, and that's well within the setback.
Yeah, okay, so just
So
make sure.
this would just be like a countertop with storage below.
Yeah, so it's probably, okay.
What was the issue with the height? Let's be specific so we understand.
So that is under 6'6" then, it seems.
Yes.
Yes, so,
Okay, so he's just gonna confirm that, that's all.
Just identify it on the plans, please.
Yeah. Okay. Covered that. Dan, you have any questions? I'm sorry, are you done with your presentation?
I'm looking to you guys at this point.
Okay, Dan, you have any comment?
No comments, Caesar. Thank you.
Kevin?
Nothing from me.
George?
No comments.
Mike?
No comments.
Mary Ann, Doug, Ed?
no.
Okay, Sarah, anything from the public? Sarah?
Sorry, there's nobody raising their hand and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, thank you. We'll see you next time with those clarifications. And,
Great.
and,
Okay. So we'll reach out to Han and ultimately, satisfy those additional comments.
yeah,
And
and if there's a coverage, if there's the variances, could you identify what percentage you're looking for any variance? In other words, if there's a coverage
Okay.
variance to 10% over, 20% over, some number, so we can, not that you need one.
Understood.
Without knowing what the value is. Okay?
Understood.
Do you have
Thank
any
guys.
further questions for us?
No, my understanding is that basically I'm going to satisfy these questions you have. We'll revisit this next month, next Wednesday, the first Wednesday of next month. And hopefully at that junction, we'll be at the next level.
Hey, thank you very much. And thank you for sticking it out to almost 10:30 like the rest of us.
Oh, me too, guys. It's been a long night. Appreciate it.
It's almost a record. I think the record was 10:32, but if we can, we'll hang out and make it set the record. But I don't feel like it.
Well, I'm glad I didn't play the records tonight, guys. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be the record breaker.
All right, meeting is closed. We'll see everybody next time. Thank you for the longevity of tonight. It was a long time, and I think we got a lot done. And we'll see those who are coming back the next time. Good night, everyone.
Good night, thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks.